This is Hiiragi Yuya, 24 years old, a talented stage actor. His career is very successful. He has a beautiful girlfriend named Midori, and he receives support from his mother's student, Kiryu Masato. Everything was going well for Hiiragi Yuya until he was cast in The Phantom of the Opera. He almost killed his lover, but he managed to stop himself as he still had his reason. But everything truly changed for him after. He brutally attacked two thugs while in disguise, seeking inspiration. He felt extremely guilty and wanted to turn himself in. But Masato, who was always by his side, wanted him to stay quiet until the play was over and he would handle everything. Yuya hesitated. But when Masato used his mother's life and his own to persuade him, Yuya softened and agreed, thinking he would confess when the play ended. The real turning point that made him a true murderer was when he suspected and planned to kill Sakuragi. Is Hiiragi Yuya truly a sick murderer, or just a poor actor haunted by his roles? I hope you all will follow this series to the end. Appearing in the frame is the back of a young man holding a knife, with strawberry syrup splattered everywhere. His face is smeared with the red liquid. His eyes are wide open, and a crazed smile plays on his lips. He thinks to himself, if I had turned back then, this wouldn't have happened. Without showing any expression, he furiously swings the knife repeatedly while his thoughts continue. It's hard, isn't it? For you too, huh? He grips the knife handle with both hands and stabs down hard. This causes the crimson liquid to splash up as he continues talking to himself. Me too. This young man's image appears on the 8:30 a.m. program, explaining the news you're curious about. The hot topic is why this actor is so famous. With the headline, Acting Full of Power. The voice of Inohara 10 rings out, he's so cool, upon seeing her idol on TV, with her incredibly cute round eyes. 11-year-old Inohara 10 tells her father, I want to meet Hiiragi-kun in real life. In the picture is Jinda Yumiki, 32 years old. He smiles gently at the little girl. Ten-chan, you've really been into him lately, haven't you? Hearing Jinda, Inohara excitedly turns to answer. Because he's so good. He's really cool. His aura is completely different from normal people. Jinda maintains a fond expression looking at his little daughter and asks, an aura, huh? Rubbing her adorable chubby cheeks. The little girl squeezed her eyes shut with a look of pure adoration for her idol and told Jinda he was the star in a TV drama and a movie. He does plays too. I want to go see one. But before she could finish, someone interrupted. Hey Ten, a man with sharp features gestures for the little girl to quiet down. He says your voice is getting loud. This man is Inohara Tatsumi, 32 years old and Inohara's father. He reminds the little girl, you have to be quiet in the hospital. Remember, realizing she had been noisy, Inohara quickly covers her mouth and whispers an apology. Oh, I'm sorry. Then Tatsumi approaches and pats his daughter's head and turns to greet Jinda. Hello, Jinda-san. Are you here for a visit? Seeing Tatsumi, he also cheerfully replies. Yeah. Hello. Tatsumi thanks Jinda. Thank you for often visiting Ten. Jinda maintains a friendly demeanor and says with a smile, it's nothing. I'm the one who should be thankful. Looking at his watch, Jinda suddenly exclaims, sorry, I have to get back to work. Tatsumi consoles him. That must be tough for you, while the little girl Inohara cheerfully encourages him. Do your best, uncle. Jinda leaves but doesn't forget to turn around and wave goodbye to the father and daughter. Outside, a white car is already parked and waiting. As Kiryu Masato is putting something away, he sees Jinda approach and knock on the window. Reaching for the car door handle, 29-year-old Kiryu Masato asks Jinda, Welcome back. How's your mother? Getting into the car, Jinda closes the door, then adjusts his glasses and says to Masato with a smile, Same as always. Once settled in the car, he takes off his glasses and tosses them in the back. Jinda says wearily, I got stuck listening to gossip at the hospital again, lifting his handsome face. He adjusts his tie. It turns out Jinda Kuki is the actor Hiiragi Yuya who appeared on the news in the hospital. Then Yuya turns and asks Masato, By the way, I even got to hear a fan's voice in person. Masato, who is focused on driving, asks in surprise, A fan? Remembering the little girl Inohara? Masato says, Oh, the kid from the next room. Holding a book in his hand, Yuya reads intently but still answers, Yeah, she always comes to visit Mom. Closing the book, Yuya chuckles with amusement, remembering the little girl's expression, and says, She was watching a recording of me on TV and said she wanted to meet him in real life. Masato also smiles and replies, Makes you want to tell her you're standing right in front of her, huh? At this, Yuya hugs the book and laughs with delight. And Masato, driving the car, also grins foolishly thinking about that scenario. Suddenly, Masato's tone becomes serious as he reminds Duya not to let it slip. Duya understands and replies, "That's not allowed, right?" Saying this, Duya lowers his head sadly and speaks, "I need to become someone that kid can comfortably cheer for." Hearing this, Masato asks him, "You're still bothered by it?" About the other day, the scene changes to a dark room, with clothes strewn all over the floor around him, and Duya sits alone on the bed reading the script for Phantom of the Opera. An image of a castle appears in the night. The setting is the opera house in 19th century Paris. An image of Christine appears in the night. Rumor has it that a phantom resides there. Who nurtured Christine's voice? An image of Christine dancing with her female co-star under the stage lights, freely falling rose petals adding to the allure of the dance. But then Christine's image becomes terrifying as he is covered in red liquid. He clutches his chest, his other hand holding a sharp weapon still covered in the red fluid. It is said that he killed those who stood in his way for a classic masterpiece steeped in love and hate. Akamatsu Midori, 25 years old, lies in bed and asks Duya, "Hey, aren't you sleeping? You have to wake up early tomorrow." "Right." Duya leans over and replies, "Midori, you go ahead and sleep. I still have some things to do." Midori raises her hand and shouts, "I've already memorized the lines, so that's enough." Then she comforts Duya. "Relax a little, you genius actor." Duya looks at his hands and speaks with a worried tone. "My role. I still don't fully understand the Phantom Eric, a person who can kill even strangers he's never spoken to." Then he whips his head around with an annoyed look when he sees Midori already snoring soundly, after just comforting and confiding in him. He says dejectedly, "And she can still sleep soundly." Overwhelmed with helplessness, Duya rubs the back of his neck and says with frustration, "I'm so jealous." But then his amber eyes turn sad, as if his heart is filled with many conflicting emotions. Looking at the script in his hand, his expression becomes somber. He thinks to himself, in the script, the Phantom Eric kills the stage manager. The reason is that when something went wrong backstage, that person blamed it all on the Phantom. The mask hovers in his mind along with his questions. Killing someone just for that seems ridiculous. The stage manager probably didn't even know the Phantom existed. Thinking this far, Duya suddenly stops. He tells himself, "No, it could be." Clutching his chest, Duya writhes as he silently remembers his own situation. Being scolded, being blamed by someone who doesn't even know me, who has never once seen me, if that's what I always had to endure. His arm reaches forward as he says, "Selfish. You don't know anything." Touching the mask, Duya's face is filled with bewilderment. In his head are still the meaningless words of strangers. "You don't know anything. Relax, genius actor." Duya puts on the mask as if he has understood everything. He says to himself, "You don't know anything either." Now Duya is facing Midori sleeping soundly in bed. He remains motionless for a long time. Then suddenly he reaches out with both hands and chokes Midori while her eyes are still tightly shut. Suddenly Duya snaps out of it. In a panic, his face is filled with terror, and sweat pours down his face. He screams loudly in his own madness, "Me, Midori, I just now." But looking closely, the girl is still sleeping soundly as if the world could end and she wouldn't wake up. Which leaves Duya speechless. She's asleep. Or maybe, back in the present. Their car is still speeding down the road. Masato confirms with Duya after recalling the incident and says, "For sure, you're the type of actor who gets too into character." Thinking of the mask from the play, Duya falls into a thoughtful silence. Masato continues, "It's like your soul was taken over by the role. But Midori-san is fine. You held yourself back, didn't you?" Duya replies sadly, "Yeah, that's right." Masato asks again, "She was asleep?" "She's a very deep sleeper, right?" Duya raises a hand to stop him. Yeah. All right. Seeing this, Masato says, "Well, more importantly, if the media finds out about your relationship with Midori-san, it'll be really, really convenient. So you have to be careful. Seriously." Hearing this, Duya can only manage a weary smile. A few days later, at the opera theater, everyone is busy cleaning up after the show. Someone shouts loudly, "Thank you for your hard work." Masato walks behind Duya and praises him. "Great work. This time felt like a real performance, not just a rehearsal." Hearing this, Duya laughs and says, "Thank you." "Ahaha, thanks. Just like a genius actor, huh?" Hearing the word genius, Masato thinks to himself, "Genius, huh?" Then Masato steps forward to open the door for Duya and says, "I don't have any plans after this. I'm going home to rest." Duya squints and replies, "No, I'll stay a bit longer after a short rest." Masato demands. No, you need to rest properly. Duya immediately refuses. No, I can't. I still don't feel right. Entering the room, Duya sits down on a chair and says while taking off his shirt, I'm going for a walk. He takes off his shirt with both hands, revealing his six-pack abs. Duya tells Masato, Jinda style. Masato looks at Duya with a helpless expression. He can only say, disguised and going for a walk to clear your head. A while later, Duya in his Jinda disguise is wandering down the street. He recalls Masato's words. I'll head back to the office first, but you need to be careful. Holding out his hand, Duya thinks to himself, when I choked Midori, it felt like I understood Eric, but there's still something wrong. While walking down the street, Duya suddenly stops and looks into a deserted alley. A question flashes in his mind. Did the phantom Eric ever walk down a dark path like this? Without much thought, Duya turns and enters the deserted alley. As he walks, he thinks, no, if he lived underground, it must have been even darker. Right. His steps stop when he hears a voice from behind. Hey bro. Duya turns around to see two tough-looking young men standing behind him. He asks, what's the matter? The brown-haired man says to Duya with a sly smile, this road has a toll fee. The one in the beanie chimes in. That's right. You have to pay up. Duya panics and shouts, no, this is a public road. The brown-haired man hearing this puts his arm around his shoulder and says to him, you're an adult, right? Follow the rules of the road, okay? The guy in the blue beanie also chimes in with a threat. You want to go home safely without getting hurt, right? What's wrong with that? Hearing these words and being touched, Duya shouts, let go. As soon as he speaks, the guy in the blue beanie immediately gives him a punch as a souvenir and yells, shut up. The brown-haired guy next to him puts on a very fake look. Oh, my adults who can't stay calm are the worst. Then he chokes Duya and drags him into a building. He even threatens. All right, now it's time for a lesson. Yet in his mind at that moment there is only one thought. Phantom of the Opera has been adapted many times to this day. Then a powerful kick to the gut brings Duya back to reality and he wonders, what's with these guys? At this point, Duya can only curl up and take the beating, but he still can't shake the thought. The origin of the main character, Phantom Eric, changes with each version. Seeing the two guys dancing and making a scene in front of him, he understands they beat people partly for fun, partly as a joke. Duya's hand fumbles behind him, and suddenly he finds a crowbar. But no matter the version, Eric's crimes all have something in common. Duya's eyes widen as he touches what he was looking for, while in his mind he's still thinking. They treat him like a selfish child, who knows nothing at all. Everything starts to fall apart, and then is stained red by hasty and cruel words. A long time later, a voice is heard. Kiryu-san, it's Duya calling Masato. With blood-red hands holding the phone, Duya says, I want to apologize. Behind him, the two thugs are lying motionless, in extremely painful positions, and Duya at this point has completely transformed, his face and body covered in blood. He says gently to Masato in an extremely calm voice, I've become a murderer. A long time later, Kiryu arrives at the scene and speaks in a low voice as if to confirm everything. In other words, they started it. Right. Standing with his back to Duya, Kiryu reassures him, Duya-kun, you did nothing wrong. It was self-defense. Duya is now terrified, his ketchup-covered hands covering his fearful face. He says, that was excessive self-defense, anyone can see that. Duya clutches his head and collapses in guilt, constantly apologizing to Kiryu. Masato-san, I'm sorry, even though you always supported me. Masato approaches and reaches out to ask Duya, will you be okay from now on? Suddenly, Masato's voice breaks off. As Duya stands up and interrupts, he is very resolute when he tells Masato, there is no from now on. I'm calling the police. But then Duya remembers the past when he first met Masato. Duya said, I'd be happy if you could stay with me a little longer. Masato's gaze is now extremely determined. He says as if giving an order to Duya, let's get out of here. Glancing around, Masato assesses. It looks like construction here has been stopped, and you have nothing to do with these bodies. Looking at the two bodies on the ground, Masato makes a proposal to Duya. If we keep quiet, no one will suspect anything. Even if the bodies are found, you won't be a suspect. Rejecting Masato's proposal, Duya firmly asserts that his own thoughts are right. He says, going is the right thing to do. Masato still tries to persuade Duya. There's no need for that. You're not a bad person, Duya shouts. No, I am a bad person. Then he remembers his actions towards Midori. He tells Masato, there's something wrong with me. I'm really not myself anymore. His eyes filled with desperate emotion. Yuya hangs his head and shouts, "Even though I killed someone." Yuya's hands clutch his small body as he sinks deeper into overwhelming fear. Looking down at his ketchup-stained hands, he utters incredibly frightening words. "Right after I killed them, I felt amazing, like I was liberated." Hearing these words from Yuya's mouth, Masato calmly asks, "What about your mother? About Shizuko-san?" Thinking of the woman fighting illness and loneliness alone in the hospital, he continues to question. The surgery costs, the treatment costs not from an injury. Your life is now Shizuko-san's life. Yuya is stunned and lowers his head upon hearing Masato's questions. He whispers, "That." Without letting Yuya hesitate, Masato relentlessly asks further, "So can you throw away your path as an actor, after coming this far with blood and tears?" At this point, Yuya helplessly reaches into his jacket for something. He closes his eyes and gently voices his thoughts. "That would be a shame. That I can't play Eric. I think I've understood him." His trembling hands hold the phone forward and his voice breaks, but still. Hearing this, Masato grabs Yuya's hand tightly and shouts loudly as if to rally his spirits. "Then let's perform together. You should play him." Yuya's face is utterly shocked. He still can't understand Masato's words and only manages a huh. Snatching the phone from Yuya's hand, Masato runs off and tells him, "If you've decided, we need to hurry. Back to the stage. I'll take care of the rest." Yuya panics and runs after him, shouting loudly, "Hey, wait," before he can finish. Masato jumps into the car, closes the door, and starts it, ignoring Yuya's panicked cries from outside. This won't work. After starting the car, Masato opens the door, gets out, and asks Yuya, "Won't work? Why? You need to be honest with your feelings." He takes off his outer jacket and orders Yuya, "Please move aside. I'll move the bodies," while Yuya panics and shouts loudly, "Are you even listening to me?" Ignoring him and doing his own thing. Masato moves towards the two bodies. He tells Yuya, "Just this once. Phantom of the Opera, just this once. Perform on stage. Then we'll decide what to do next. Until then, we'll hide these bodies." Seeing that the other person is ignoring his words, Yuya tries to shout loudly to stop Masato, and Masato-san too. Masato is also fully aware that helping Yuya will get him involved, but he still tells Yuya, "Yeah, I can't avoid being charged with aiding a criminal. So what?" Placing the body in the trunk of the car, Masato continues to persuade Yuya. "The most important thing is to make sure nothing looks suspicious. Yuya-kun, you're going to continue rehearsing. Just stick to that plan. I'll be back at the theater." "Got it. For Shizuko-san's life, for the stage. Don't give up." The scene changes to another place. Much later, Yuya returns to his Jinda identity. He is standing in front of a church, his heart heavy with thoughts. I gave in to Masato-san's strong will, sitting in the church. Yuya's heart is now filled with various emotions. He thinks to himself, "I can't, absolutely can't drag Masato-san into this. Even now. I can still go to the police station." Fumbling in his clothes, he realizes his phone is missing. Yuya lets out an "ah" and then remembers, "That's right. Masato-san took my phone." Taking off his jacket while hurrying upstairs, Yuya silently decides, "I'll borrow a phone here, although what worries me more than the murder is Masato-san." As he enters the room, Yuya is startled to hear someone call his name. "Ah, Hiiragi-san." Yuya breaks into a sweat, thinking, "I panicked." The young man, seeing Yuya, continues, "Thank you." Practicing again. Holding a pile of props, he approaches Yuya with a warm smile and says, "I really admire your passion." Yuya awkwardly smiles back and replies, "I'm just too sensitive. I feel like I'm not doing anything right. Really talking too much." Holding up a film reel, this backstage guy says, "Everyone says so. Hiiragi-san is on another level even in rehearsal." "Ah, if you don't mind. Could I help you out a bit? I'm in charge of lighting. I'll adjust the lights for you." Yuya asks him in surprise, "Really? Honestly? That would help a lot." Then he sighs to himself, "I'm such an idiot." A while later, standing alone on the stage, Yuya thinks to himself, "In the end, I came back here." Then he returns to his rehearsal. "Sorry, I'll try not to take long." No, take your time. You can stay longer." Looking down at the empty auditorium, Yuya with a sad face silently reflects, "This sight. This is the last time. Just a little while. If it's just a little while." Then, Yuya lets himself get lost in the performance. He passionately hums every melody of this play, as if this would be the last time he'd ever stand on a stage. Remembering the two pained, twisted faces he had murdered, Yuya is still engrossed in his own crazy performance. The backstage guy adjusting the lights is also wide-eyed with surprise at Yuya's brilliance, unable to utter a word. In his eyes now there is only the image of Yuya tirelessly practicing. Everything seems to freeze, and in those same eyes, he can see the image of a real Eric, not Yuya. He can imagine the scene of how Eric mercilessly struck down an unfortunate victim. And on stage, Yuya has truly become one with the character he is playing, as if he were the real character in this play. When he finishes, Yuya stands up, his face drenched in sweat. He lets out a long breath and looks up at the ceiling tiredly. From the seats above, the backstage guy continuously applauds Yuya's rehearsal. You can see on his face now a feeling of complete admiration for Yuya, so much so that he can't close his mouth from the performance he just witnessed. Looking in that direction with tired eyes, Yuya can see the image of Masato applauding him. Then Yuya bows as a real actor would, "Thank you very much." At the same time Masato emerges from the wings, he calls out, "Yuya-kun!" Seeing Masato, Yuya is surprised and stammers, "Masato-san, when did you?" Interrupting Yuya, Masato gets straight to the point. "Ah, you. Let's wrap it up for today." Then he hesitates. "Because of your mother." From the audience above, the backstage guy squints and thanks Yuya. "Thank you for your hard work." A while later, Masato and Yuya are in the dressing room. Masato tells Yuya, "I just got a call from the hospital. Surgery can probably be scheduled, but we'll have to wait at least 6 more months." Yuya, hearing this, is a little sad, then hesitantly replies, "I understand, but the surgery costs are still..." Without letting Yuya finish, Masato interjects to reassure him, "I'll request an advance from the company president. For a rising star like you, it's almost certain to be approved." Even so, Yuya is still a bit flustered. Then Masato starts to recount. "And one more thing. The police were at that construction site." Placing a cup in the coffee machine, he continues, "I was going to clean up the blood, but someone might have reported it because I was making noise." Yuya asks, "So?" Picking up the coffee pot and pouring it into a cup, Masato answers directly, "That's right. Let's assume covering up the murder is no longer feasible. But we're going on stage." With a gentle but determined expression, Masato hands the coffee cup towards Yuya and says, "Not just once, but many times." Still unable to believe it all, Yuya raises the coffee cup to his lips. He says, "No, I can't. We live in a world full of surveillance cameras. And didn't we say just this once?" Hearing Yuya say this, Masato just replies gently, "It's fate." Yuya confusedly just says, "Huh?" Masato's eyes suddenly become serious. He coldly tells Yuya, "The doctor with a long waiting list just became available. It's fate. Let's work hard to save money before the surgery. Otherwise, your mother will die," even though he knows what Masato says is true. Yuya's heart is still hesitant due to too many overlapping emotions. He hesitantly speaks up, Without letting Yuya finish his sentence, Masato interrupts, "I'll die too." Hearing the words Masato just uttered, Yuya's eyes widen in astonishment. He stammers back, "What did you just say?" Masato asks again, "Didn't you hear me?" Then he looks up to the sky and draws a finger across his neck in a threatening gesture. With a determined expression, Masato threatens Yuya, "If you confess, Yuya-kun, I will end my own life." With a fire of determination burning brightly, Masato approaches Yuya. He speaks in a very dangerous tone that makes Yuya break out in a sweat from fear. This isn't a joke or some drunken murder, right? Even the people around us don't know, right? Then he smiles a smile full of sinister implications. Masato continues, "Don't worry. When we get caught, we'll go together." The image of a pair of shiny handcuffs appears in Yuya's mind, accompanied by Masato's enticement. Until then, we will fight. With eyes full of suspicion, Yuya looks at Masato, who is still trying to convince him. "Besides, you want to play that role, right? Eric the Phantom." Remembering the backstage guy's expression from earlier, Yuya's eyes suddenly turn sad. Masato sits down in a chair, resting his chin on his hand thoughtfully, and says to Yuya, "That rehearsal just now, you did great, right? That staff member too. If he can't see Hiiragi Yuya perform anymore, he'll be sad." Yuya grabs a towel, drapes it over his shoulder, and looks at Masato, calling out, "Masato-san." Masato, hearing this, immediately meekly apologizes to him. "Sorry about that, but please understand me. On your shoulders are the dreams of many people. Even though what Masato says is right, Duya is still hesitant. Even so. But seeing him hesitate again, Masato continues to plead, please, think it over carefully. Then he declares loudly and emphatically, about all the effort you've put in and those stupid morals, which one is more important? Hearing this, Duya hangs his head and repeats Masato's words. More important. Suddenly, Duya remembers Masato's expression when he first saw him act. That was amazing. Duya-kun is really amazing. Sitting opposite Duya, Masato reassures him. Let me handle the bodies. Our goal isn't a perfect crime, just keeping the deception going as long as possible. In that case, there's a way. Duya's reflection in the mirror is bowing his head in hesitation. If I confess, Masato-san will. Masato still confident in everything he says to Duya. I already told you. Suddenly Duya speaks up. Okay, then he slowly lifts his head. Standing opposite Masato, Duya is full of determination. He says, I understand. The scene changes to the next morning, on the highway. 2 male bodies appear surrounded by crows and the police receive a report about 2 deceased men. Flowers grow out of the eye sockets and mouths of these 2 men. This incident would later become known as the Hanaya case. No one knew that this was just the beginning of a serial murder case. Not even the killers themselves. A while later, Tatsumi also arrives at the scene. Then he receives a call from his daughter. Daddy's a little sleepy. Many curious onlookers have gathered around to film. Tatsumi greets another police officer while telling his daughter. That's right. Remember to listen to your aunt. Lifting the crime scene tape. He ducks under it. He tells his daughter. Okay, Daddy's a little sleepy, but I have to keep going. Pushing aside the curtain to enter, he continues. So that everyone can live in peace. Well then, standing before the 2 bodies, surrounded by police officers examining the scene, Tatsumi begins to speculate. Identity unknown. Abandoned in the middle of the night. Both have their eyes gouged out. Are the flowers a memorial? The perpetrator could be a lunatic. Looking at the phone in his hand, he thinks deeply. Unusual or, it's certainly brutal. But the lack of clarity makes Tatsumi's expression show clear confusion. A lunatic, because it's so cruel. Tatsumi speculates that there's something suspicious behind it. It feels like there's some calculation behind it. Returning to 11 years ago, Duya's mother Jinda approaches to greet Masato. Kiryu-kun. Long time no see. Seeing a familiar face, Masato also politely greets back. Jinda-san. Long time no see. She approaches Masato and says, Perfect timing. Can you look after Duya for me? Then she turns to leave but doesn't forget to thank Masato. I need to talk to the CEO. Thank you so much. Before Masato can understand anything, she has already left, leaving him stunned for a moment before calling out. Wait, seeing this, Jinda says back. Sorry for being in such a hurry, this is my son, Duya. Seeing this, Masato no longer refuses. He stands up, extends his hand and says, Oh, no, it's okay, don't worry. Then he begins to introduce himself to Duya. I'm Kiryu Masato. Jinda-san, I'm a student of your mother, holding the comic book on his lap. Duya nonchalantly replies, I know. Noticing Duya's book, Masato asks him in surprise, Is that a manga? Seeing the other's interest, Duya also introduces it to him. I found it at a used bookstore. I remember watching it a long time ago. Seeing the manga clearly, Masato exclaimed, Damn. Duya, seeing this, began to show off to the new guy he just met. Ah, right. They also made an anime. I have watched the battle with the final boss many times. Hearing this, Masato began to feel interested. Although his eyes were hidden by thick glasses, you could still see his excitement through his facial expression. Without a wasted motion, this man stood up and began flailing around. Then he recited lines from the manga. I will cast everything aside, if it means destroying evil. On the opposite side, Duya saw how into it he was, so he also joined in. He also began waving his arms and legs and shouting, Then cast aside your life. Tengetsu O. The evil one will destroy evil. Witnessing Duya being just as passionate as him, Masato had to open his eyes wide in surprise. With an awkward but cheerful expression, Masato got even more into the story. I thought evil was standing right in front of me, but returning to reality. Oh, what a haggard face and vacant gaze. Masato was slaving away at his job. He held the steering wheel and still uttered words of lament. And now, that garbage is the evil. A conscience is not needed. Seeing his friend looking tired, Duya called out loudly, Masato-san. His tired eyes still focused on the road, but his mouth was still moving. Masato told Duya, The cover-up last night will make the police look for someone with a deep grudge, a madman or a victim. Then he suddenly yelled, disrupting the initial investigation. That is a key to a perfect escape. Seeing this guy so out of control, Yuya decided he should drive. Hey, I will drive. You did not sleep all night. Right, as if he did not hear Yuya at all. Masato continued to madly roar out plans to mislead the police. He burned the clothes and belongings, then put back on the old disguise that Yuya had bought. This will affect identity verification and witness questioning. Seeing Masato still acting frantic when he called, Yuya said dejectedly, I just thought of it. Can they identify through teeth or fingerprints? At this point, both of them fell silent, as if, hello, we did not think of this. But the silence did not last long before Masato roared again. He used a road with no security cameras to dump the bodies. Sitting next to him, Yuya was also at a loss for words with this guy. He could only think to himself, this eye gouging is really serious, drenched in sweat, with dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. Masato continued, if necessary, I will bring the gouged out eyes myself. Hearing this, Yuya could not take it anymore and protested. That is not okay. Then the two of them fell silent again. Only the turtle charm hanging in the car kept swinging non-stop. A while later, upon arriving, Masato hit the brakes to stop the car. He said, we have arrived. Leaning over, he said to Yuya, I will go back to the office. Yuya-kun, just focus on your practice as usual. The wind gently blew through Yuya's hair. He wondered, Masato-san, why are you doing all this for me? Sitting in the car, Masato calmly replied as if it were obvious, because you will become a legendary actor in history. As he drove away, he said back, just like always. When he was left alone, Yuya said to himself, killing is clearly evil, and, stepping inside, Yuya sighed as he looked at the clock. He lamented, still 2 hours until practice time. As he walked upstairs, he thought back about the bodies. It makes sense with what just happened. Looking at the phone screen to his ear, Yuya could not help but worry. If the car is discovered by chance, it will not be suspicious. When he saw the newspaper headline about the discovery of 2 male bodies, Yuya thought to himself, he dumped the bodies somewhere nearby. Masato-san said to leave the body disposal to me, but thinking of the dazed face, the dark circles under his eyes, completely lifeless, Yuya wondered, is he going to be okay? He reached for the pair of glasses in his pocket. Yuya put them on. Now he looked like a different person. Phantom of the Opera. Beneath the stage is a hidden space, moving through the buildings. Yuya, in his Jinda persona, transformed into a ninja. As he moved, he thought, the main character, Eric, the Phantom. He moves skillfully through the secret passages and hidden rooms of the theater, looking down from above. Yuya affirmed, his spatial awareness ability. This is one of Eric Phantom's signature skills. This is the closest I can get, not from the roof of the theater. Approaching the theater door, Yuya thought, I can't see the progress of the investigation from here. Even so, I have figured out some things, resting his chin on his hand. Yuya began to deduce like a professional detective. The secret passages and basements that Eric used would not be easily noticed at first glance. In other words, they would be blind spots to the naked eye. They could be high or narrow spaces, like the path I just took. I need to be careful not to be discovered. Using his index finger to push up his thick glasses, Yuya reasoned, this means that even moving through them requires caution. That's not practical if used frequently. After pushing up his glasses, he stroked his chin, his face annoyed when he could not think of what he wanted. Naturally, his core strength must be very solid. Every movement must be precise. Suddenly, Tatsumi's voice cut through Yuya's train of thought. Excuse me? May I? Yuya replied in surprise. Yes. Seeing a familiar face, Tatsumi asked directly, are you associated with this building? Jinda-san, realizing someone had found him. Yuya became flustered, breaking out in a sweat. Then remembering he was an acquaintance, he quickly greeted him. You're Tenchan's father, aren't you? Or perhaps, seeing Yuya recognize him, Tatsumi also raised a hand to greet him. Hello. Thanks for always being kind to my daughter. Getting straight to the point, Tatsumi directly pulled out his professional badge to brandish at Yuya. He asked Yuya, so then, why are you here? Seeing the police badge, Yuya froze. He thought to himself, police. That little girl's father is a cop. Seeing the other man seem nervous, Tatsumi got straight to the point. Actually, I am patrolling around here for another reason. Yuya was sweating bullets. He stammered in reply. Actually, while thinking to himself, I can't say I was worried about the body I dumped. At this point, Yuya decided to play his cards. He looked down, took off his glasses, and said, "Sorry, I'm just a curious observer." These words confused Tatsumi, an outsider. Fixing his hair to look handsome, Yuya revealed his true identity. "I am an actor named Hiiragi Yuya." Hearing the young man reveal his true identity, Tatsumi was startled and backed up against the wall, stammering, "Hiiragi. My daughter talks about you a lot. Really, a celebrity." Putting his hands behind his back, Yuya bowed at a 45-degree angle and explained respectfully. "Getting suspected or arrested for trespassing would be very bad. Yes, I'm actually about to play the role of a murderer." Then he started thinking of a way to face Tatsumi. He's a professional. Lying will backfire. Then Yuya told Tatsumi, "I heard about a recent incident. I thought I could find something useful for the role." Tatsumi regained his composure and approached Yuya to question him. "In other words, you came in here without permission." Yuya acted very deeply. He hung his head and started acting. "Sorry." The two fell silent. While Tatsumi began to scrutinize Yuya, he continued to act remorseful. After a moment, Tatsumi sighed, rubbed his head, and said, "I understand. Just this once, since you've been so kind to my daughter. Just waiting for that." Yuya bowed politely again and said, "Yes, I won't do it again." But suddenly my young man became curious. But what kind of person is the culprit?" Seeing Yuya's curiosity about the case, Tatsumi answered seriously, "I can't say anything about the investigation." Yuya thought to himself, "Damn it." But then he scratched his head and tried to ask again. "No can do," Tatsumi replied coldly. "No can do." Suddenly Tatsumi revealed a little information to him. But what kind of person is the culprit? That's right, naive and lonely. Hearing this, Yuya exclaimed in surprise. Yuya thought to himself, "Phantom of the Opera, what makes this story so fascinating?" Tatsumi was still lost in thought about the culprit. "It's just my impression, but no one to share worries or sorrows with. Can't feel the social distance with others, so they sometimes overreact to others. It feels like that." Yuya was speechless when he heard these things. He was still lost in his own thoughts, abandoned by his mother because of his ugly face. Phantom Eric was saved from loneliness. So that's what you call character analysis. I guess it's because this story is about love. Tatsumi scratched his head and continued. "No, I've seen it a lot. It's like a gut feeling." While Tatsumi was engrossed in his analysis, Yuya came to a conclusion. This person is a danger. Looking at the man who was both familiar and strange in front of him, Yuya affirmed one thing. This person can see the truth. Thinking of Masato's exaggeratedly resolute expression, Yuya blamed himself. "I'm a fool. Why? Why did this happen?" The Phantom Eric haunted his mind. Yuya clutched his face in pain. "Why is it so troublesome? Why won't you let me go even though you know nothing about me, you idiot? Even though you hate me." Noticing the other person's strange behavior, Tatsumi grabbed Yuya's shoulders and shouted loudly, "Jinda-san! No, Hiiragi-san! What's wrong?" Being shaken violently, he suddenly woke up and quickly stammered an apology. Sorry. I was thinking too much. I was thinking about what kind of person would be naive and lonely." Hearing this, Tatsumi rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "So I understand it's for the role." "Right." Suddenly a phone rang. Yuya was surprised. My phone." Then he quickly turned to leave, but didn't forget to turn his head to ask for Tatsumi's permission. "Sorry, I'm going out for a bit." Seeing this, Tatsumi also replied cheerfully. "Go ahead." Seeing Masato's name on the screen, Yuya thought to himself, "From Masato-san, I'm saved." Then he quickly answered the phone. "Hello." As soon as he answered, Masato on the other end of the line quickly informed him. "Bad news." Yuya's expression darkened, looking annoyed when he heard Masato say, "Someone is starting to suspect us," turning to leave. Yuya's expression now looked like nothing less than a murderer's, as he heard Masato say, "There's no choice but to kill them." When he heard Masato say, "There's no choice but to kill them," Yuya's expression turned cold and emotionless. Looking back at Tatsumi, he answered worriedly, "What do you mean there's no other choice?" Suddenly he turned and said loudly to Tatsumi, "Sorry. It seems there's a problem at work. Seeing this, Tatsumi waved his hand and said, I understand. But you can't just keep sneaking in like this. Without waiting for Tatsumi to finish, Yuya jumped out the window. Yes, well then. Leaving Tatsumi with a head full of questions. Actor, ninja, Yuya ran off saying, You just said there's no choice but to kill. Who? Why? On this end of the line. Masato replied coldly. If I act alone, you'll get angry. That's why I'm telling you. But if necessary, I'll do it myself. Yuya yelled through the phone. I slept almost twice as much as you today. If someone has to decide it's me, tell me. According to Masato's account, I'm keeping an eye on someone. That person is always busy. While looking at Sakuragi, Masato said to Yuya, Yes, that's right, 3 months left. While Sakuragi thought to herself, he seems particularly tired today. Suddenly, 2 other female colleagues called her. Sakuragi-san, can you go to lunch? Hearing someone call her, Sakuragi quickly replied, Ah, yes. Sakuragi left but still couldn't help but notice the busy Masato. Kiryu-san is in charge of Hiiragi Yuya, a talented actor that our company is actively promoting. Even while eating and chatting with everyone, she only thought of Masato. Hiiragi-san is very lively, friendly, and well-liked by everyone in the company. During the meal, someone suddenly said, Ah, right. Have you heard about the recent incident? Ah, that incident. The victim's eyes were gouged out, but Sakuragi was still infatuated with Masato. Compared to Hiiragi-san, the other girls were still gossiping non-stop. That's really too horrifying. I might have to call my parents to pick me up. The girl next to her started bragging to everyone. My boyfriend drives me every day, you know. The black-haired girl sitting opposite her snapped angrily. What the hell? You guys? No matter what anyone said, Sakuragi only thought of Masato, the gentle aura of Kiryu-san who quietly supported him. When everyone had finished eating and left, the black-haired girl clutched her head in pain. I want a boyfriend so bad. The brown-haired girl teased her. You have to take a risk. You have to take the first step. The 3 girls left, still chattering excitedly. That's the secret. Sakuragi watched them, thinking, take a risk. Take the first step. After some consideration, she confidently decided, on my own, take the initiative. Masato was still working hard, even humming a few lines from some ancient singer. That day, I acted a little strange. Sakuragi returned to her desk, thinking to herself, normally, I would never do something like this. Then before I knew it, suddenly she was standing behind Masato and shouted, Kiryu-san, startling Masato so much that his soul almost flew away. He broke out in a sweat, turned around, and asked, Sakuragi-san, what's wrong? She stammered, struggling to get the words out. Then she offered to Masato. I want to lend you a hand. Masato asked in surprise. Help me? Sakuragi was now blushing red with embarrassment. She tried to summon all the confidence her parents gave her and said to him, You look really busy today, and you don't look very well either. Hearing her say that, Masato rubbed his head and replied, I'm fine, really, I'm fine physically. Remembering Masato's rushed appearance last night, she said to him, But last night, you came back to the office and then went out again. You looked so tired. She confessed gently to him, If there's anything I can do to help, even just a little. Then, hearing this, Masato approached Sakuragi and said, Maybe I'll take you up on that. Seeing Masato ask for her help, she blushed and replied, Of course. Then followed a scene of the 2 of them busy with work, with Sakuragi's thoughts. Hiiragi Yuya's value. We have collected objective data on him. After a while, Masato held up a piece of paper and said, Looks like we'll have to present this to quite a few people. While working, Sakuragi wondered. Speaking of which, the plays. Hearing the mention of the play, Masato asked, Phantom of the Opera. Right, her hand still typing on the keyboard. Sakuragi replied, Yes. The first performance is coming up soon, so I find it a little strange. Then she asked him, Normally, before the premiere, you should be completely focused on Hiiragi-kun, right? Hearing these words, Masato's eyes flashed with sadness before he said, But Yuya-kun isn't a child anymore. At this point, Sakuragi seemed to notice something. Seeing this, Masato asked her, What is it? Sakuragi replied, May I borrow your glasses for a moment? Although he didn't understand what she meant, he still took off his glasses and gave them to her. Glasses. Yeah, here. Sakuragi carefully took Masato's glasses with a handkerchief and said, "Excuse me, I think there's some dust or something on them." While cleaning Masato's glasses, she discovered a streak of red liquid. She wondered. A blood stain. Masato was also surprised. He approached her and asked, "What's this?" Sakuragi replied, "You might have been injured somewhere without noticing." "I'm sorry. Let me wash it and return it." In her heart, she was extremely worried. Almost there. Sakuragi was embarrassed when Masato brought his face close to hers. She awkwardly handed Masato's glasses back to him. "No, it's okay. I'll return the glasses right away." Then she clasped her hands, bowed her head, and apologized to him. "Sorry. I keep talking. I'll continue to help you." Putting his glasses back on, Masato said, "Thank you." But in Masato's mind, he was frantically thinking about the bloodstain. That bloodstain. Most likely from when I disposed of the bodies. She must have started to suspect, and she's still holding the bloody evidence. There's no way to deny it. On Duya's side, he was extremely worried now. His face was very uncomfortable, and he silently blamed himself. But jumping to conclusions is no good. At least, wait until I'm done performing. In his head, there was another voice constantly blaming him. "You're too careless," Duya asked irritably. "Are you threatening me?" The other voice continued to question Duya. "Are you going to follow me?" Duya quickly replied to Masato. "No, I mean the way back to your house." Masato was confused. "My way back? I can investigate," Duya replied. "Then I'll count on you, just please." Duya begged Masato. "Don't act rashly," the other voice demanded of Duya. "Don't drag me into this." Duya's face was now gradually changing, with fiery red eyes and terrifying fangs. Masato's voice still echoed evenly. "Even though you say that, I understand. There's only one way left." "Right. There's no doubt about it." The scene changes to that evening. Sakuragi was on the train heading home from work, thinking to herself, "I'm so tired. I ended up working overtime again." But at that moment, her phone suddenly rang, catching her attention. Messages from Masato kept popping up on her phone screen. "Thank you for your help today. You really helped me a lot. You really helped me a lot." Seeing Masato's messages, Sakuragi's attitude changed 180 degrees. She cheerfully replied to the messages. "No, I'm not sure how much I helped." But Masato still expressed his gratitude. "Thanks to you, I finished the documents earlier than expected. It's all thanks to you, Sakuragi-san." Hearing the person she had a crush on say that made Sakuragi's heart bloom. She quickly replied to the message, "I'm so happy to hear that." After getting off the train, Sakuragi walked home, but she didn't forget to reply to Masato's message. "Please let me help you again next time." Seeing this, Masato quickly refused. "No need. Sakuragi-san also has her own work." But Sakuragi still tried to care for Masato. "It's okay. I'm more worried about your health, Kiryu-san." Masato also apologized to her. "About that. Sorry." Looking at each message on her phone screen, Sakuragi was confused. She thought to herself, "I'm the one who should be sorry because actually, I just wanted to sit next to you and..." Thinking of this, she suddenly froze. Her feet seemed to be hovering in an indefinite space. She was surprised, not understanding what was happening to her. Her body seemed to be being sucked deep into a bottomless black hole. When she came to her senses, she had stepped one foot into a pitch-black manhole. Losing her footing, Sakuragi's body fell freely into the deep, dark sewer. And so Sakuragi fell deeper, as if something was trying to pull her body. The sound of an object falling into water echoed in the deserted night. Sakuragi lay motionless in the dark space. Only someone's thought echoed. Phantom of the opera, the phantom's name, Eric. Duya emerged from the darkness like a monster in a human skin. He approached Sakuragi's motionless body in front of him, while his thoughts continued. Deep beneath the theater, there must be a hiding place near an underground lake. He bent down, muttering meaningless words like a deranged murderer. He set a trap in the lake to drown intruders, a curse of the water. "I never wanted to interfere in other people's affairs, but you people keep coming here. Why are you chasing me? But you people keep coming here. Why are you chasing me?" One of Duya's hands gripped Sakuragi's shoulder. The other supported her neck. He was still whispering to himself, "You people won't let me go. So annoying." Then he mercilessly drowned Sakuragi's face in the cold water, regardless of whether she was alive or dead, his mouth constantly repeating the curse. "This is a curse for all. The curse of water. Sakuragi's hand emerged from the water, trembling as if still trying to cling to her fragile life. When he was done, Yuya looked at the cold hands that had just taken an innocent life with a soulless pair of eyes. Clutching his forehead, he slowly stood up. The faint light from the ground shone down on his small body, making everything even more terrifying. Clutching his head, Yuya screamed, "I knew it! You didn't really suspect me!" Then he bent down to pick up Sakuragi's handbag, gently taking out the handkerchief she had used to wipe the blood from Masato's glasses. Raising his hand high, Yuya dropped the handkerchief, letting it gently fall slowly. With his sick thoughts, "You have feelings for Kiryu-san." Leaving Sakuragi's body behind, he left with his unfounded suspicions. Then at some point, "You'll realize the truth and go to the police." He began to shed tears, not knowing if it was out of guilt or because he felt so sorry for himself. Hiiragi Yuya had now truly become a crazed murderer. In his head, the thoughts kept echoing. "You're the one who's right. We're the ones who are wrong." Thinking of Masato's words from before. At this point, "Your life is almost Shizuko-san's life." Those tears kept flowing, but they couldn't wash away all the questions in his heart. "But that's why. I promise you." Looking at Sakuragi's hand slowly sinking into the cold water, Yuya could only bow his head before the body of a hapless victim he had murdered, with a sentence full of belated remorse. "I will go to hell. That's for sure." At the theater where Yuya's performance was taking place, a few days after the disappearance of Misaki Sakuragi, the audience was already filled with people waiting to see Yuya's performance. The Phantom of the Opera 2023 opening day. An hour before the show started, Yuya had finished his makeup for the role. Sitting in front of the mirror, he listened to Masato's report. "It seems someone has reported Misaki Sakuragi missing." Standing outside, he calmly told him, "Are we lucky she fell?" Yuya's hair obscured his face. He said to Masato, "I'll warn you about one thing." Yuya's cold eyes and emotionless words made Masato outside also shiver and break out in a sweat. It wasn't that she fell, it was that we pushed her. Looking at himself in the mirror, he continued, "Even though you've helped me, I can't ignore it when you twist the truth." This made Masato can't help but think before acting. Yuya-kun always exudes an overwhelming aura. He seems to have become a completely different person. Pushing up his glasses, his face looked very pleased, he thought to himself. And today, that pressure is just like the Phantom. Thinking of this, he suddenly spoke up and suggested, "Respect for the deceased. Do you think so?" Without waiting for Masato to finish, Yuya quickly interrupted. "No, it's disgust for lies," after hearing all of Yuya's words. Masato also understood one thing, but that nobility is a burden. It might destroy you. At this point, he quickly spoke up. "Sorry, but taking on more guilt is also a form of lying." Clenching his fist, Masato secretly decided, forget it, for the goal of leading Yuya-kun to become the greatest actor. Looking at Yuya's emotionless face in the mirror, Masato understood one thing, even if it means trampling on Hiiragi Yuya's conscience. Then he whispered into Yuya's ear, "Her fate was decided by her own carelessness. It's not Yuya-kun's fault." Hearing this, Yuya could no longer bear those lies. He turned around and protested, "No, I drowned her. Anyone can see it's my fault." Masato sighed helplessly, thinking he won't waver. Meanwhile, Yuya was still trying to argue. "You're talking crazy again." After a moment, Masato bent down and said to Yuya, "That's right, but..." Without letting him say any more, Yuya quickly interrupted. Of course, there was also an element of luck, but only a little bit, because, saying this, he clutched his head in frustration and said, "I know Sakuragi-san." Thinking of Sakuragi's image, Yuya continued, her height, her personality, her habits. Then he continued to talk about Sakuragi's other characteristics, the way she walks, even the length of her stride. Then came the people who worked with him at the same company. "We work at the same company. I observed her so carefully. Also, her way home. It's a deserted road with no people." Remembering how Sakuragi was engrossed in her phone, Yuya explained to Masato in confusion, "I even know how to distract her, so she doesn't watch where she's going. Then it's just calculation, which manhole cover she would step on. I just needed to guess by using a map and opening the cover." His hands still clutching his head, Yuya continued, "Even if I fail, I just need to make sure she dies." Yuya was extremely uncomfortable thinking about what he had done. He said, "I've repeated it." Then he remembered that he was the one who had pried open the manhole cover that night. As long as there's a possibility she suspects you, I'll do it again, time and time again. The fire of hatred began to burn brightly in his heart. You think I'm dangerous? Hearing these words, Masato quickly replied, No, not at all. Yuya still didn't believe him and shouted, Then think carefully. The day you feel that way, you can leave me any time. While the two were arguing, someone knocked on the door from outside. Someone's voice echoed, reminding Yuya, Hiiragi-san, it's time. Stopping the negative words, he quickly replied to the person outside, Thank you. Then he turned to look at Masato and said, Well then, Kiryu-san. Then he flicked his sleeve, scattering rose petals, looking very cool, along with an invitation. Enjoy the show, a murderer's performance. Outside, the brilliant stage lights had been turned on, signaling that the play was about to begin. The auditorium was packed with spectators, the Phantom of the Opera, a talented but unfortunate man due to his monstrous appearance. In the wings, Masato was waiting for the stage curtain to be slowly raised, with the narration, Phantom Eric, who doesn't hesitate to kill. In the end, he was saved by love of the singer Christine, whom he yearned for. In other words, Masato was also stunned, his eyes wide, at Yuya's brilliance on stage. And on stage, the lights seemed to focus on Yuya's center. In that moment, Masato remembered the small image of Hiiragi Yuya he had first met. But now, Yuya had become a talented actor standing on the stage. It's because of love. He also remembered the times he laughed and played with Yuya in the past, and now, in the boy's eyes, there were only the sad, regretful tears of a crazed murderer. In contrast to the innocent smile of a child from the past, people are led by love. The audience watching this performance was also filled with countless emotions. Some were wide-eyed with astonishment, some admired Yuya's talent, and some cried with emotion. But what was the true emotion that Yuya needed? A moment later, a few people started to applaud, followed by the entire hall filled with applause for a talented actor, for a performance filled with emotion. Standing on stage, Yuya also had to quickly wipe away his tears, and perhaps he had truly succeeded in his role. More than anyone, the most moved person was probably Masato. He was so happy that tears streamed down like a waterfall. He remembered the warm handshake from before, along with Yuya's thanks. Thank you so much. Along with his shy words, the first person he was, to treat me like that, Kiryu-san. At this point, Masato had completely broken down. His tears fell. He looked at his hands unconsciously. Outside, all the actors were bowing to the audience, while Yuya was greeting the other actors. You worked hard today. You did well. Someone was approaching and calling. Hiiragi-san. It turned out to be the backstage staff from before. As he walked, he praised Yuya. You were amazing, as always. No, today was the best ever. Hearing these flattering words, Yuya still humbly replied, It's all thanks to you practicing with me so much. Please continue to help me in the future. Yes, of course. As for Masato, he stood silently behind the scenes, waiting for Yuya. When he got close, Yuya said to Masato, Masato-san, let's go to the dressing room. Masato was startled and replied, Oh, right. Once in the dressing room, Yuya took off his wig. He asked Masato, So what do you think? My performance as a murderer. Putting down the wig, he continued to ask, ignoring the natural talent, was that performance worth a life? Yuya continued, If you think not, even a little. At this point, Masato had bowed deeply and shouted, I'm sorry. The tears continued to fall, along with Masato's confession. I'm the one who was wrong. Facing the bewildered Yuya, Masato continued to apologize. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Wiping away his tears, Masato said, The monster Eric. That performance was incredible. Those recent actions left Yuya stunned with astonishment. Regaining his composure, Masato's expression was now very resolute. I believed. Without waiting for Yuya to react, Masato rushed forward, grabbed his hand, and yelled, You will be written down in history as an actor who can captivate everyone. Then suddenly his voice dropped. Then he continued to confess. I was too stupid. I really did believe in you, but it seemed his conscience was eating him up. So now he was trying to explain himself as if he were trying to win back an ex-lover. I just believed. Everything just stopped there. I feel really ashamed of myself. Yuya hung his head and asked Masato, Can you stand it? He looked up at Masato and said, After the Sakuragi incident, you must have realized I'll drag you down with me. Masato's eyes widened to their maximum when he heard these words. The haunting scene of the victims Yuya had killed, along with his questioning, still echoed. and things will only get worse. I might make a mistake again. I can't deny that. Yuya looked straight into Masato's eyes. He asked him, "Can you still stand it?" Suddenly, Masato let out a strange smile, then asked Yuya back, "Stand it?" Masato laughed crazily and shouted, "What's there to stand?" Grabbing Yuya's shoulders, Masato looked more like a demon than Yuya. That performance. Remembering Yuya's play, he continued, "The darkness of the devil, black as a bottomless abyss, the light of humanity, as bright as the sun," and Yuya's expression in that play. Masato roared insanely. "It all becomes nourishment to make you grow, all your experiences." He seemed to have gone mad, raising his hands to the sky, his mouth still uttering terrifying words. If that's the case, why not kill more? That's right, narrow down the roles. Masato's expression was now extremely twisted, as if this were his true nature. Only the role of the murderer remains. Carve that into this world. Masato danced wildly, as if he had just discovered a true genius. Hiiragi Yuya, the murderer. Make everyone, make this whole world, recognize it, and then, suddenly Masato tilted his head and whispered into Yuya's ear, "You will become one of a kind." Meanwhile, Yuya just hung his head and asked him back, "But if I limit my roles, there will be fewer roles, and my mother's surgery costs too," realizing the problem. Masato reassured Yuya, "You don't need to worry about money. We'll deal with that later." Masato continued to tell him, "Well, I also collected some data on your value to apply for an advance to pay for the hospital bills. But it's not needed anymore." Seeing Yuya's sad expression, Masato encouraged him. "Let me carry it for you," he excitedly told him. After that performance, everything else becomes meaningless. Then came a brilliant display of psychological manipulation from Masato. Forget about that data, because it's meaningless now. Not knowing that Yuya's inner thoughts were, "I wanted you to abandon me. Look at me like a madman and leave, more than ever." At this moment, Yuya was the one who was most pained, but you were the one who awakened the actor in me. Yuya remembered Masato's excited eyes from before. That day, when you applauded me, not because I was her son or because I was a child, but because of the performance itself. At that time, Yuya was very shy, but he understood. You inspired me to step onto the stage. That's when Hiiragi Yuya really began. Yuya sighed and said, "I understand, Rihito-san." Masato was bewildered. "Yuya-kun," he told himself in his heart, "I understand. I know what I need to do." Looking at the person opposite him, Yuya decided, "First, I will free Rihito-san from me. I won't turn myself in because I won't die because of me. I won't let that happen. I will make your faded eyes come to life again." Yuya was very regretful now. "I dragged you into this and ruined you. No one else but me." Thinking of Sakuragi's image, he thought to himself, "And once everything is over, I will take responsibility for everything and go to hell." Yuya closed his eyes tightly. "Sakuragi-san, we'll keep our promise." A moment later, he said to Masato, "After all, for now, let's not limit the roles yet. Not everyone will agree like Rihito-san." Sitting with his chin resting on his hand, his legs crossed, Yuya said calmly, "Especially when it comes to money." Masato, seeing Yuya's attitude, immediately shouted, "No, that!" with a bored expression. Yuya continued, "Besides, I also want to try all sorts of roles." Masato replied with his eyes half closed, "Well then, I can't help it." But then he excitedly cheered him on. "Our direction won't change. I really think it's a great way to build a brand." Yuya was also at a loss for words at this action of Masato's. Then he had to laugh at those awkwardly inspirational words, and so the two of them were able to get rid of that gloomy atmosphere. At the same time, at the police station, Tatsumi was about to go inside when someone called out, "Oh, Inohara-san." Kotaro raised his hand to greet Tatsumi. "Are you closing up for the day?" Seeing Kotaro, Tatsumi replied dejectedly, "Yeah, tough day. Inui." This young man is Inui Kotaro, 27 years old, outside. Tatsumi raised his hand to greet the police officer at the gate. "I just came back to change clothes," Kotaro exclaimed. "Ugh, Team 1 is so harsh. If it were me, I'd never leave the house again." Hearing Kotaro say that, Tatsumi quickly said, "Don't talk like you're 50 years old." On the way, Tatsumi mentioned the recent case. "There's a tricky case going on, it can't be helped." Kotaro went and asked him, "The one related to Hanaya-san?" Hearing the phrase, Hanaya, Tatsumi was confused and asked, "Hanaya? What's that?" Kotaro didn't hesitate to explain to the father of one, "It's a code name, you know, to refer to the body. Then Kotaro also wondered, I don't even know who called it that first. Stretching, Tatsumi complained. What a terrible sense of humor. While the two were waiting for the red light, the billboard on the side of the road was continuously playing some song. Then it suddenly cut to Midori's interview. Good evening. I'm still sleepy today, but I came to promote Garden of the Murderer. Tatsumi didn't care, but Kotaro seemed quite interested, so he looked up. On the show, Midori was still very enthusiastic and continuously promoted the play. After a while, Kotaro pointed towards the billboard and said, Speaking of which, is it true that Midori Akamatsu is dating the actor Yuya Hiiragi? Is it true? Every time those two appear on TV, everyone online says they're very close. So the two of them stopped to watch the program for a long time. Kotaro complained to Tatsumi with a dejected look. I hope some tabloid newspaper will publish that news soon. Looking at the posters, he continued. But if that happens, the posters might be taken down. As for Tatsumi, he only thought of the name Hiiragi Yuya. Meanwhile, Midori's interview continued to air. My family used to tell me, you'd probably still be sleeping even if you were killed. They used to say that to me. I'll wake up. Are you for real? Tatsumi remembered his previous meeting with Yuya and thought to himself, there's something about him. There's something that keeps bothering me. While Tatsumi was thinking, the body we found, and his aura. They were both similar and different. Kotaro was still chattering on with his story, but I heard he's a great actor. A love scandal might not affect his reputation much. Hearing this, Tatsumi thought again. Actor. Acting. Suddenly, Kotaro called him. Ah, Inohara-san, if you're going back, do you want to grab something to eat? There's a late-night sushi place nearby. Feeling annoyed, Tatsumi turned to glare at him with eyes that looked like they wanted to eat him alive. Hey, Inoue, do you think actors can really change their personalities completely when they're acting? Hearing such a question made Kotaro sweat and his face scrunch up like a monkey eating a chili. But after being serious for less than 30 seconds, his joking nature resurfaced. I'm not an actor, so I don't know. Tatsumi was also at a loss for words with this guy. He said, Is that so? A week has passed since the discovery of 2 male bodies. The current situation is not promising. We still have no leads on a suspect. If there's any clue at all, it's just... Tatsumi was still stuck in his thoughts. Just a hunch. It's hard enough to get an address, let alone an interrogation. He didn't notice that behind him. A woman was being harassed. While he was wondering, how can I meet him again? Midori behind him screamed when she was annoyed by the man. Ugh, so persistent. The noise was so loud that Tatsumi turned to look. He saw the drunkard teasing Midori. Don't say that, please. We had a good time drinking together. Seeing this guy being so persistent. Midori shouted. That's a completely different story. Don't get the wrong idea just because we talked. She pushed the man's hand away and threatened. Don't follow me anymore. You want me to call the police? The drunkard still tried to hold on to her. Ah, sorry. Seeing the injustice. Tatsumi rushed over, showed his police badge, and asked, I'm a police officer. What happened? The drunkard sobered up when he heard police. Police? Midori's eyes widened in surprise. Wait a minute. A plainclothes policeman? It's the first time I've ever seen one. The man quickly ran away, shouting as he ran, No, I didn't do anything. Goodbye. Midori cursed him severely. Get lost. Next time I'll ignore you. Seeing this scene, Tatsumi was helpless and could only say, I'm glad you're safe. Then he turned to leave. Sorry, but Midori didn't. She pulled his arm. By the way, can you take me home? What if he follows me? Tatsumi sighed wearily. This is crazy. So Midori pulled Tatsumi's arm. Don't worry, it's nearby. If anything happens, I'll tell them on a show that a police officer helped me. It'll improve my image. Tatsumi was puzzled. A show? Hearing that, Midori turned around, posed, and introduced herself. I'm actually a celebrity. Everything continued until Yuya got home. He was stunned by Midori's drunken state and couldn't say a word. Seeing Yuya arrive, Midori shouted, Yuya, you're back. This is Officer Inaki. While waving to Yuya, Tatsumi corrected his name. It's Inohara. Midori pointed at Tatsumi and said, Inaki was the one who helped me when that guy was harassing me. Looking at Tatsumi, Yuya thought to himself, I didn't expect to meet again like this. Feeling awkward, Tatsumi rubbed his head, looked at Yuya, and asked, but if something happened, things would get messy, right? So, how should I explain this? Unable to stay calm. Duya called Midori. Hey Midori. Approaching the drunk Midori, Duya asked her. Normally in this situation, people would think you're having an affair, right? But Midori gave an unrelated answer. I'm not a normal person anymore. Seeing this, Tatsumi could only think to himself, wow, this person. Then Duya bowed his head and apologized to Tatsumi. I'm sorry, Inohara-san. I didn't mean to cause trouble, and please keep my relationship with Midori a secret. Seeing this, Tatsumi quickly stood up and waved his hands, saying, no, I'm the one who should apologize. So, is your relationship really like the rumors say? After this, Tatsumi had to secretly praise Kotaro. Q is really good with information. Midori held up an apple and questioned Duya. Wait, you two know each other? And peel another apple. Sitting down next to Midori, Duya peeled an apple and explained to Tatsumi. Well, a lot of things happened. Life is full of coincidences. Watching Duya peel the apple, Tatsumi secretly thought, he's peeling an apple. While feeding Midori the apple, Duya asked about Tatsumi. How are your wife and Tenchan? Seeing Duya's actions, he had to secretly praise him. He's such a thoughtful person, but he still had to answer. Yes, although I haven't seen them yet because I haven't been home. Suddenly Duya asked a pointed question. Is it related to the case from a few days ago? Realizing the other person was probing him, Tatsumi quickly suppressed the thought. I can't disclose information about the investigation. Seeing this, Duya quickly scratched his head to hide his embarrassment. Oh, is that so? Tatsumi also replied with a strained smile. Yes, it is. Everyone understood except Midori. She asked, what happened in that case? But she didn't care about the issue for more than 5 seconds and quickly got up to find more drinks. Let's drink some more. Looking at Duya, Tatsumi probed him. Are you worried? Realizing the other's intention, Duya quickly reacted. Of course. I'm worried about my lover's health. Not giving up. Tatsumi emphasized the topic. No, I mean that case. As Duya reached for an apple, Tatsumi suddenly said to him, actually, there's something I want to ask you. Duya was puzzled. What is it? Tatsumi didn't hesitate and asked Duya a tricky question. How do you feel when you kill someone? Feeling annoyed by the question, Duya replied in a low voice. Sorry, I really don't understand the meaning of that. Realizing he had misspoken, Tatsumi apologized. Oh, sorry. I guess I didn't make myself clear. Then he quickly rephrased his question. You mentioned it before, about the role of the murderer you played. Although he was friendly on the outside, Tatsumi was thinking. That reaction was very natural. Then he confided in Duya. My profession deals with criminals. Guilt often causes them to have a mental breakdown. He also voiced his own doubts. I'm not familiar with acting, but imitating shocking actions or words can have a negative impact. Duya calmly replied, It's nothing. While peeling an apple, Duya looked straight at the other person and said, That's not the case. Acting and reality are completely different. Tossing a piece of apple into his mouth, Duya said. As you can see, I'm completely fine both physically and mentally. Hearing these words, Midori jumped down from her chair and snapped. A lie? Both Duya and Tatsumi widened their eyes in surprise at this statement. They both exclaimed, A lie? The drunk woman didn't stop and shouted even louder. It's a complete lie. Then she lunged at Tatsumi and shouted in his face, Listen, Inaki, Duya is always working. She mentioned how he was always acting and practicing, playing the role of a delivery person to read scripts and build his character, practicing so much that he even skipped sleep just to work. Saying this, Midori rushed over, grabbed Duya's shoulders and shook him. She shouted in his ear, Pay some attention to me, you jerk. Tatsumi, sitting opposite them, helplessly thought to himself, She's completely drunk. Feeling annoyed, Duya said to Midori, You've had enough to drink. Midori, Not giving up. Midori also shouted back, You think I can just stop drinking right now? Ever since this play started, I know you've lost weight. Tatsumi silently watched this scene without being able to say a word, as he had accidentally walked into a hot drama love story. On this side, Midori pointed at Duya's face and said, Seriously, Duya should prioritize me over his work. What's the point of living without time for yourself? Duya could only say helplessly, You're drunk and spouting morals. Thinking of what Kotaro had said, But he's a great actor, Tatsumi muttered to himself. They say you're a genius. Then he said to both of them, But you're actually a very hard worker. But Midori didn't think so. Maybe he's trying too hard. completely frustrated and helpless. Duya sighed. Hey, Midori. I think it's time. But when he looked again, Midori had already fallen asleep. She's asleep. Whoa, really? Seeing this, Tatsumi commented. She's a bit impulsive, but also really cute. Duya could only hold his head and confirm. Honestly, she's helped me a lot. Then suddenly he called out. So, Officer Inohara. Hearing his name mentioned, Tatsumi replied. Yes, holding a fruit knife in his hand, a murderous aura emanated from Duya. He asked Tatsumi, Are you still suspicious of me? Seeing the scene before him, Tatsumi also froze and his hair stood on end. Not seeing Tatsumi's answer, Duya continued his reasoning. He quickly replied, Well, it's not exactly suspicion. It's more like curiosity. If you really suspected me, you would have worried about me running away and avoided meeting me directly. Feeling the atmosphere change, Tatsumi thought to himself, What's this atmosphere? But when he observed Duya closely, he suddenly realized, No. Has my personality changed? At the same time, Duya also spoke as if he were reading Tatsumi's thoughts. No matter what, I'm still a suspicious person. Even Tatsumi had to sweat in this atmosphere. He asked Duya, Why do you think so? Duya hung his head and revealed to Tatsumi. The first lesson I learned in acting was how to sit. The way you sit reflects a lot about your heart. When he remembered Tatsumi's earlier question, Duya continued, You're sitting with your back too straight. And when you answered the question about killing, I noticed a slight tension in your thighs. He continued, The police are observing me, watching my reactions. I understand that very well. At this point, Tatsumi had to admire him. You're so calm. Tatsumi analyzed for Duya. In situations like this, most people would panic. Meanwhile, Duya still hung his head and answered naturally. But there's no point in rushing. Turning the knife, Duya explained to Tatsumi, What's important is the impression you have of me. Inohara-san, my image, everything I do, is for you to decide for yourself. Am I innocent or saying this? Duya's face revealed the expression of a cold-blooded murderer. He hissed through his teeth, A murderer! Tatsumi clenched his teeth as he remembered meeting Duya near the crime scene. But now, facing Duya, he was hesitating and unsure. The pressure of murder is too obvious. Is it really him? But if he's the culprit, why would he expose himself like this? What would he gain from it? Seeing Duya's smile, he secretly guessed, Is he provoking me? No. Maybe he's convinced. At this point, it seemed Tatsumi was stuck in Duya's countless different expressions. He thought that he wouldn't be seen as the culprit. Then suddenly Tatsumi tilted his head and dismissed that argument. No, there's definitely a clue here. Tatsumi suddenly remembered the body of the unfortunate male victim. The fake feeling he had felt at that time was now completely gone. Suddenly remembering when Duya peeled an apple with his left hand, he thought again. Not to mention the autopsy results showed that the culprit was right-handed. So, thinking of this, he said, I don't think it's you. On the opposite side, Duya added. Even so, it's still not clear, Tatsumi continued. This whole story is so vague. While the two were talking, there was a knock on the door outside. Duya quickly interrupted. Ah, sorry, someone's here. Outside, Masato shouted through the camera screen. Duya-kun, sorry, I just received the script for the next role. Realizing it was Masato, Duya quickly said, Thank you. Hearing the familiar voice, Midori, who was sleeping, suddenly sat up and called out loudly. Rick-kun, Tatsumi wondered. Rick-kun? Although drunk and sleepy, Midori still explained. Duya's manager. He's with Duya even more than I am, but he's still nice to me too. Hearing this, Tatsumi had a new suspicion, a manager who's closer than a lover. Looking at Midori and Duya, he thought to himself, Wait a minute. Meanwhile, Midori, holding a bottle and a glass, ran out to greet Masato. Rick-kun, come in. Duya and Inaki won't drink with me, so you come in. Masato outside was also helpless with this woman, and Duya was sweating bullets and didn't know how to explain. At this time, Tatsumi silently repeated these words. Wait a minute. Rick-kun, come in. Duya and Inaki won't drink with me, so you come in. At this time, Duya was still thinking in his head. I'm confident that I can get past them. I'm an actor. His hand stretched out as if he were controlling puppets. Looking at the audience's expression, he was sure. My job is to control how others see me. Turning his palm up, he was confident that he could manipulate everything. Thinking of Tatsumi, Yuya didn't think it was an exception. Even if the other person is a police officer, it's no different. But I feel he's different. And I did it. Yuya now seemed to split into two entities. He was sure of one thing. I've managed to distance the image of the suspect from myself. I did it. But so why? But when he looked back at Midori, Yuya, who was screaming and yelling, was completely helpless. Come on, let's drink. Drink with me. Masato was completely overwhelmed. He could only try to explain to Midori. That's why I told Midori-san to take the car. You smell strongly of alcohol. He watched the two of them playing happily, but he was trying to encourage himself. No, don't lose heart, even though my accomplice is busy with the police. Come on me. After a while, Masato turned to Yuya and said, Anyway, Yuya-kun. Handing the script to Yuya, Masato said, This is the script I mentioned the other day. They insisted that you take the role. It was almost like they were forcing you. Holding the script, Yuya said, Thank you. I'll take a look. Flipping through the pages of the script, he thought, Inohara-san is probably trying to reconcile the discrepancy between the suspect's image and my own. He must have started to consider the possibility of an accomplice. If we follow logic, if I show that the relationship between me and Rihito-san isn't close enough to cover for each other, then it might be okay. As soon as Midori saw Yuya reading the script, she started yelling again. See? You're taking on more work. These two, they're always together. So it's convenient to just hand things off to each other, even when they're not working. Seeing the situation, Yuya decided, first I need to stop Midori. If I let this continue, my entire personality will be exposed. Breaking off his train of thought, Yuya approached Midori and said to her, Look, Nohara-san is starting to feel awkward. On this side, Tatsumi also awkwardly replied. No, I'm fine. By the way, then he asked Masato, Are you two old friends? Being asked, Masato politely replied, Yes, that's right. Only Yuya was worried. Oh no, this conversation is going in a bad direction. Seeing this, Tatsumi had trouble asking further. But friends? You two seem to have a big age gap. Seeing his confusion, Masato explained to him, I've met his mother before. Yuya broke out in a sweat and secretly calculated in his head. Even if it's forced, don't let the conversation stop. Then he just said, to confirm Masato's words. Suddenly, Tatsumi spoke up. This is just a hypothetical. His eyes were full of suspicion. He glanced at Masato and made a hypothesis. But if Hiiragi-san commits a crime, Kiryu-san, what would you do? If I do, and it ends his acting career, what would you do? Meanwhile, Midori was wondering what Yuya was holding. He was sweating bullets, thinking, wait a minute, am I cornered? Suddenly, Yuya's eyes were fixed, as if he had discovered something very interesting. On this side, Masato was already well aware of Tatsumi's intentions. He pushed up his glasses and replied, I don't know what you mean by that question. Tatsumi knew he had been too hasty and quickly defended himself. Anyway, it's just a hypothetical. And we're drinking. When Midori heard drinking, she immediately held up a can of beer towards Tatsumi and shouted, Inoki, you haven't had a single drop. Masato's cold face and thick glasses seemed to hide his true emotions. Masato said slowly, Most people hate lies and deceit, things that don't follow common sense. Tatsumi looked straight at Masato and asked coldly, Is that so? Without hesitation, Masato replied. Of course I would advise him to turn himself in, for Yuya-kun's sake. Receiving the answer, Tatsumi replied, I understand. Realizing the other person seemed disappointed that he hadn't gotten anything out of him, Masato directly asked, Aren't you satisfied with that answer? But the one who answered that question was not Tatsumi, but Midori. She said, Not at all. Hearing Midori say that, Masato turned to her and said, I'm not saying that to Midori-san. Crossing her arms behind her back, Midori nonchalantly confessed, Sometimes I really think that. Midori continued, Riken, you may be close to Yuya, but with a half-drunk, half-sober expression, Midori said, Your feelings are very superficial. Being called superficial. Masato clenched his fists and went, Huh? Midori didn't let Masato speak. She interjected, Like, it's all just work, right? Sitting opposite them, Tatsumi was also confused and quickly asked, You mean the golden goose? These words made Masato tremble with anger. The fire of anger in Masato blazed. He shouted, "Hey, that's too insulting. Completely out of line." He placed a hand on his chest, his face angry, his voice extremely determined. He said, "No one wants Yuya-kun to succeed more than I do." But Midori wouldn't give up easily. She started giving evidence. For example, you wish him success, not happiness, right? Just now, bringing her face closer to Masato's, Midori questioned, "You said for Yuya-kun's sake? It sounds so superficial." Then she turned and hugged Yuya, continuing, "I'm still the one who suits Yuya best," ignoring the fact that Masato had completely lost his temper. Seeing the situation tense up, Tatsumi said quietly to Yuya, Hiiragi-san is a bit. I'm completely helpless." Yuya was already used to this scene. He advised Tatsumi, "Don't mind them. They're always like that." More importantly, returning to the main topic, Yuya looked up and asked Tatsumi, "Have you ever met a criminal with multiple personalities? I mean, in real life?" Tatsumi asked in confusion. "Multiple personalities?" Placing the script on the table, Yuya pointed at it. He said, "This script, it's about a criminal with 2 different personalities." Still confused, Tatsumi scratched his forehead and replied awkwardly, "For the role. I mean, unfortunately, I can't help." Looking up at the ceiling thoughtfully, he continued, "Although it's common on stage, in real life, unlike Tatsumi, who had no answer, Yuya's inner self was different." He thought to himself, "No, I'm sure I've seen it. Changing roles, changing personalities. I've seen it. I've seen myself." He mulled over the script and then analyzed himself. In the end, he came to a conclusion: the possibility of an accomplice. Okay, you can believe that, but in return, reconsider, allow yourself to doubt. The lone wolf theory that you were about to dismiss. Tatsumi's thoughtful image was imprinted in Yuya's eyes. He thought, "And focus on the actor Hiiragi Yuya." After a moment of silence, Yuya spoke up. "If so, then," glancing at Midori and Masato, Yuya asked Tatsumi, "Do you know anyone who has experience with this type of case?" On this side, Masato was extremely angry. He yelled and questioned Midori. "Anyway, Midori-san, you're being unreasonable. It's not normal. Who would invite a man they just met into their house?" Seeing the two of them so happy, Yuya looked up. Some random thoughts crossed Yuya's mind. "I forgot. Those two are still arguing." Then he turned to look at the fiery Masato. He realized, Rihito-san's face is red. It's dangerous. The man was still fuming, pointing at Midori's face and shouting, "You're going to get in trouble. One day you're going to get hurt." Midori asked in confusion, "Hurt? How?" Gritting his teeth, Masato growled, "Like, you know, the things that have been happening lately." Masato's face was covered in sweat. He yelled, eyes gouged out, flowers left at the scene. Those things. Hearing this guy mention that case, Yuya was also surprised and let out a "huh." "It's over now, guys. If this gets out, it's all over." Yuya was extremely panicked and screaming in his head, Wait. When Masato mentioned the case, Tatsumi also stood up in surprise and asked, "Kiryu-san, you mean the double murder from last week?" His face now became extremely serious. He said, "Well, that's strange. My side never released the fact that we placed flowers to the media. So how did you know?" At this point, Yuya could only hang his head and sigh. It's over. At this point, he also understood one thing: there's no turning back. Unless, but Masato made a spectacular U-turn. He pretended to be calm and innocent, and answered Tatsumi, "You ask how I know? Well, it was on the online forums." Seeing the case file leaked and spread online, Tatsumi panicked and ran up to Masato, shouting, "No way!" "Where?" Handing over his phone, Masato pointed at it. Then he said, I think it was on the local news bulletin. This area." When he saw the news article, Tatsumi received a shocking piece of news. His inner self shattered. He thought to himself, "A leak?" Without further hesitation, Tatsumi rushed off, but he didn't forget to apologize. "Sorry for the late trouble. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll be back at the station." Only Midori, who didn't understand, asked in surprise, He's gone. Goodbye?" No one knew. But Masato and Yuya knew best that something was going on. The scene changes to the next day, at Hiiragi's management company. Yuya understood that getting Inohara-san out of the house, It turned out that was Rihito-san's goal. While focusing on work, Duya thought. Yesterday's incident showed it clearly. I need evidence. Hiiragi Duya acted alone. Without evidence, I already knew the outcome. He also realized something. But something that convenient. There's no such thing. Then suddenly a noise from outside made Masato confused. He asked, "It seems something's wrong." Suddenly a man burst through the door, ignoring the person trying to hold him back. As soon as he entered, he shouted, "I found you!" Seeing someone barge into the middle of a meeting, Masato angrily yelled, "What is it? We're in a meeting." But seeing him as invisible, the man rushed past him. He ran straight to Duya and grabbed his hand, shouting, "Hiiragi Duya, play the role of the murderer for us." Duya forced a smile, but he was still sweating at the man's words. "I mean, you've already played that role." After stirring up trouble at Duya and Masato's meeting, they decided to go outside to talk. On the way, Toba spoke first. "I can't believe you came to help us. It's such a relief." Glancing over, Duya asked him, "There's something I want to ask you." Masato looked at Toba with an unfriendly gaze, "But please don't come so unexpectedly again." This man is Toba Yuto, 28 years old. When he heard Masato and Duya say that, he glanced over, replying with an extremely mocking tone, "Come on, don't say that." Manager Kun, walking behind him. Masato adjusted his glasses. He questioned him, "You just missed the meeting for the play, if you came here just to obstruct Duya-kun." Without any respect, Toba replied directly, "Almost everyone from the theater company is here. It's convenient for introductions." A while later, they arrived at another room. Toba opened the door and gestured to everyone. "All right, let's take a break from practice." He walked into the practice room, stood with his hands on his hips, and announced, "This is about the remaining empty role." Standing behind him and witnessing his actions, Masato asked in confusion, "Does this guy understand the situation?" Meanwhile, Toba was still bragging to everyone, "I brought along a supporter." Masato turned and said quietly to Duya, "We haven't even received any applications." Hearing this, Duya asked Masato, "But this play is about a murderer, right? It's bad for the brand." While you were still talking to Masato, you suddenly noticed Toba mentioning your name. "Hiiragi is here." He spread his arms and introduced Duya to the others. "Everyone. I'm sure you've all seen him on TV. This is the actor Hiiragi Duya." As a matter of courtesy, Duya also came forward and introduced himself. "It's a pleasure to meet you all." He bowed and greeted everyone under the scrutinizing eyes of those around him. "I am Hiiragi Duya. Sorry to interrupt the practice." When he saw them greeting him, the crowd around them began to murmur and gossip. In his heart, Duya was not very comfortable. He thought, "They look at me like a criminal," but Toba confidently declared, "I want him to play the main role." Then he recounted what he had observed at the performance the previous night. "I have confirmed his acting skills on stage. He's probably the most suitable person in Japan for this role." Then he turned to Duya and said, "Let me introduce the members. You just need to remember the main actors." First, Duya remembered the script from last night. He thought to himself, "Intertwined Darkness, the play that Toba invited me to participate in." Although he was a little suspicious, Duya still happily went to greet everyone. Then he explained a little about the play. It's a dramatic play with comedic elements, set in America. The plot is roughly as follows. Intertwined Darkness is an easy-to-understand story. One is the main character, Knight, who is crying after discovering his wife's affair. At a bar, he meets a man named Evan who looks exactly like him. Let's go all out. The second is Evan, who feels sorry for Knight and comes up with a plan to kill his wife and her lover. If we act at the same time, split into two directions, even if we are suspected, it will be difficult to get caught. But actually, Evan is Knight's second personality. I am you, so how can we act separately? Of course, the plan fails. As a result, Knight is pursued by the police on suspicion of murder. So, what should I do? Standing to one side, Duya watched Masato and Toba talking to each other. He thought to himself, "Now I understand Knight's suffering." Suddenly, a young man ran over and said, "Can you stop for a moment?" Feeling indignant at being forced to practice non-stop, this young man questioned Masato. "Manager, is this for real? We've been practicing for 8 hours a week for this play." While Masato was still flustered, he continued, "And isn't it less than 20 days until the performance? Are you kidding me?" Looking at this scene, Duya thought, it's the other way around. Duya remembered the schedule for the performances and thought to himself, Intertwined Darkness premieres right after Phantom of the Opera ends, It depends on the theater, but you usually have to rehearse for several months before that. Looking at Toba sighing and Masato trying hard to explain, Yuya realized the problem. He's still acting in phantom. No matter how you look at it, this is irresponsible. A moment later, the young man suggested, so we need to adjust the performance schedule. Toba heard this and immediately stopped him. Wait a minute. Then he glared with his dark, sunken eyes like a junkie and questioned, it seems you all are misunderstanding something. Getting close to the young man, Toba continuously applied pressure. Postpone the performance? Do you know how much that costs? Glancing at Yuya, Toba explained. Normally he wouldn't even look at small stages like ours, so it's best to be grateful. Then he grabbed the young man's collar, making him sweat with fear. What you should be saying is thank you. Understand? Suddenly Yuya reached out to stop him. He called, Toba-san, in the heat of the moment, being stopped. He exclaimed in surprise. Yuya began to speak in a very creepy tone to Toba. The way I say this may sound a little annoying, but approaching Toba, Yuya explained, I understand that husband's feelings. These words made Toba's mouth hang open in confusion. Then he suddenly remembered a line from the script. Everyone feels that way. Yuya directly performed a scene for everyone to see. I was so worried. The more he acted, the more he got into character. But I'll find a way. Letting go of the young man's collar, Toba quietly called out, Hiiragi! Looking at him, he opened his mouth, smiled, and said, Don't tell me you've already. I know you received the script, but at this point, Masato added, I only gave it to you at 10 p.m. last night. Hearing this, the young man's eyes also widened in astonishment. Just in one night? Yuya stood confidently in the middle of the crowd and announced, As you can see, I'm not yet at a level where I can stand firmly on stage. His eyes sadly looked around and continued, But I have grasped the personalities of the two main characters, Knight and Evan, trying to use all his emotions to persuade everyone, he said. So please let me start from the beginning. I will give my all to this performance. Then he bowed his head and said, Please give me a chance to stand on stage with everyone and make this play a success. He also sincerely asked for everyone's help. If there's anything that's not right, please tell me directly. But 30 seconds later, he changed his attitude. His face radiated a murderous aura like a bloodthirsty wolf. He slowly uttered each word, Because I will also do my best to prove myself. Outside, Masato's eyes were filled with tears. He clenched his fists, deeply moved. After this emotional speech, the young man from before left dejectedly, saying, I understand. Only Yuya was sweating and bewildered, not understanding anything. Huh? Why is the atmosphere so strange? I was being sincere. Did I lose? Toba shouted loudly. All right, let's continue practicing. Then he came over, patted Yuya's back, and said to him, You've convinced me again. I see the madness in your eyes. Hearing this, Yuya could only manage a strained smile, while in his heart he was thinking, Well, trust. It's like a castle. It can't be built in one night. Watching Masato leave with Toba, Yuya thought again. And one last thing, this stage. It's something that can only be formed when everyone practices together. Sometimes your character's personality will change a lot. Then he went to greet the other actors who were practicing. In other words, the most important thing is acting reflex, remembering the conversation with Tatsumi last night. He understood one thing. If others discover you hesitate for even a second when changing roles, his eyes radiated determination about his thoughts. They'll realize it immediately. He's acting, and consider it a failure. Suddenly someone called him. He turned around in surprise and replied, Yes, it turned out to be a girl who wanted to talk to him. She approached and reminded him, That person. It's best not to get too close to Toba. Hearing these words, Yuya was confused and just mumbled in reply. Then she bowed to him. Okay then. Then she turned and left. The atmosphere at this time also changed. Yuya was also very confused, not knowing what the girl meant. Watching the girl leave, Yuya knew, Kimura Mana, that's her name. He also commented on Mana. Her acting is only average in this play. She plays a female bartender. Yuya watched her intently. She only appears for a few minutes at the beginning, no lines. But only Yuya understood one thing. It's not that she's not trying. She just lacks experience. The experience to push ahead of others to get roles. During practice, Yuya always watched her. The words she once said to me. Now, after a few days of joining the practice, I think I am beginning to understand her. Do not get close to Toba. While he was deep in thought, Midori suddenly lowered her scary face, with a creepy voice asking, Are you thinking of another woman? Ignoring Midori, Duya silently read the script without answering. A moment later, he answered Midori. Yes, I was thinking about her. She is an actress in the troupe I am helping. Hearing Duya admit, he was thinking of another woman. Midori unleashed her inner lioness to threaten him. Let me be clear, Duya. You are misunderstanding. Duya, hearing that, asked confusedly, misunderstanding. Midori stretched her arms and then she said, I heard a rumor. She turned to look at him and then asked, that troupe is called Ryokei Suzusa, Green Light Creation, right? The atmosphere there is terrible. Mentioning Toba, Midori also commented, the director is just a figurehead. The real power is the vice director and influential figure. She heard he is a good actor, but he remembers the scene of him bullying a subordinate while listening to Midori criticize him. His personality is unbearably bad. He does whatever he wants, from verbal abuse to sexual harassment. She also said that's why the atmosphere is always tense. So people keep leaving one by one. Hearing these words, Duya thought to himself, no wonder everyone looked so familiar. Sitting on the bed, Midori said, in a place like that, just being kind is enough to make you stand out. Then she came to a conclusion. So, even if Duya is captivated by that girl, it is just an illusion. Duya also denied. No, I am not captivated, ignoring Duya's explanation. Midori uttered a sentence that sent a chill down his spine. If you cheat on me, I do not know what I will do. Sweat poured down as Duya secretly glanced at Midori, not daring to utter a single word. The scene changes to the stage. Duya is practicing with Toba. He also secretly acknowledges. Midori is right. Toba has excellent acting and observation skills. During practice, Toba commented on Duya. It is still not enough. For a normal actor, it might be enough, but you can get into character even deeper, right? He rested his chin on his hand and replied, yes. At this moment, he was deep in thought again. While maintaining a conversation and switching between two personalities, speed is a crucial factor. But if I focus too much on the switching speed, I cannot get into character. On the other hand, if I get deep into the role, the speed slows down. No, the problem is the latter. The speed of switching roles is still not fast enough. Suddenly, someone ran over and interrupted Duya's train of thought. Sorry, Toba-san, there has been a slight change in the arrangement. After hearing this person's report, Toba reverted to his gangster-like behavior and yelled, Huh? Can't you see I am talking? Are you blind? The other person was scared and just cowered. I am sorry. The more this guy scolded, the more intense he got. Use your head a little. How many years have you been in this profession? Seeing the tense atmosphere, Duya quickly stepped in to intervene. Toba-san, it is fine. Let me go over there. Then Duya asked him, You are also busy, right? When talking to Duya, his attitude changed 360 degrees. No need to worry, but I am not worried about Hiiragi. Toba suddenly turned his back and started pointing and gesturing. 4 words, radiant aura, seemed to emanate from him. He said, Every stage needs conflict. Light and dark. Yin and yang. Light and shadow. The role of the detective this time. Seeing him acting crazy, Duya had no choice but to praise him. Toba-san is the light. Looking at the staff member, Duya asked further, And Knight, the murderer character that I am playing, is the darkness, right? Duya also noticed a very fresh wound on this person's face. He thought to himself, a new wound. That must have hurt a lot when he was hit. But Toba was still dancing and spinning. I am counting on you. How brightly I shine depends on you too. Duya still looked at the staff member and thought, Toba cannot see it. He cannot see the pain or the look of hatred in others' eyes. Duya also made a decision. People like this are not rare, but to be able to ignore it so coldly. Suddenly he turned and winked at him. Hey Hiiragi, are you free tomorrow? He looked up at the sky and laughed loudly, announcing his plan. I am planning to gather everyone to come to my place. Hearing this, he suddenly remembered Masato's warning. If Toba Yuto invites you to do anything, be sure to refuse. Duya remembered Masato's serious expression. I heard some very dark rumors. He also started to want to change his mind. To be honest, I am starting to want to quit this role, no matter how good his acting is. Thinking this, Duya immediately found a reason to refuse Toba's invitation. Sorry, I have the phantom play during the day, and then a television recording in the evening. Toba showed his disappointment hearing Duya's refusal. Your schedule is really packed. He then draped an arm over the employee's shoulder and said, It's fine. That was unavoidable. But a talented person should know how to choose their job. Understand. As he led the other man away, he added, Life is meant for enjoyment. Watching him leave, Yuya thought to himself, all right, time to train and blow off some steam. 3 hours later, Yuya's voice came through. I think I might have overdone it. Masato yelled loudly from the other end of the line. I was planning to go home early today. This startled Yuya, who thought to himself, Masato-san is furious. After hanging up the phone, he left. As he walked, he thought, my method acting. I should focus on delving deeper into my current character, instead of getting distracted by random thoughts. While lost in thought, a strange sound from a room suddenly caught his attention. Yuya opened the door to check and asked, is anyone else here? It was Toba inside, standing completely naked. When he saw Yuya, he turned and said, Oh Hiiragi, training alone until this hour? Next to him was a girl shivering naked. He resumed his vile tone and said, I mentioned before practice I would return early. Since you are here, use her as well. Seeing this, Yuya asked him, Toba-san, what do you mean? When Yuya asked, he grabbed Kimura by the ear and pulled her forward to introduce, this girl is Kimura. Her build and face are decent. Sometimes I use her like this. So it turned out that Toba had been arrogant long enough and had provoked Yuya's fury. Yuya called coldly, you. Yuya then showed that terrifying smile and thought, more disgusting than I imagined. Darkness interlaced. Toba, not seeing Yuya answer, offered his convenient face and asked, what is it, Hiiragi? You not used to this? Yuya still thought it was the script of a killer with 2 personalities. Even now, this idiot did not know he was about to reunite with his grandparents and still spouted those filthy words, what a waste! You should keep at least 1 girl to obey your orders. Yuya was still lost in his thoughts based on a classic psychological thriller. He looked at his palm and wondered, can a person live like this, completely blind to others? A masterpiece never fades. He recalled the play he had just accepted, a way of life free from any bonds or anyone. Those works held emotions that never changed a person. Yuya also realized something, the emotion this play wanted to convey. He remembered the moments his wife had an affair. The husband was blindly jealous, only knowing to drink helplessly. Seeing Yuya holding his head, Toba put his hands on his hips and asked, what's wrong? You do not want to see a man in underwear. Then he turned to find his clothes and said, no choice, I will put on my pants. Meanwhile, Yuya still muttered Toba's words from before, use like this. Yuya reached for the hammer in front of him while repeating those words, sometimes like this, Maya Ma. He gripped the hammer tightly and raised it. No choice, I will put on my pants. Hearing this, Toba looked surprised. When he realized it, Yuya's arm had already swung forward. In Toba's stunned gaze, Yuya still repeated his words, life is meant to be enjoyed. Then a desperate scream echoed in the dark room. Yuya had certainly transformed this vile savage. The owl statue seemed to glow as it witnessed Yuya punish the scumbag Toba, who now lay motionless on the floor. In Kimura's sight, Yuya resembled a monster approaching her with a hammer. Suddenly, Toba sprang up and yelled, hey, that hurts! It turned out he was not dead and still had strength to shout. Yuya, seeing him still alive, gave a crazed smile and spun around. Yuya's arm holding the weapon was reflected in the owl statue's eyes. Yuya showed no mercy. He swung the weapon hard at Toba's head. From his eyes to his smile, Yuya had become another person. A sickening crunch rang out, sauce splattered everywhere, even hitting the statue above. The hammer slick with sauce lay on the ground. Yuya covered his face and called, Kimura-san. Then he recalled Kimura's warning, stay away from Toba. He stood up and gave a gentle smile to thank her. Thank you for the warning. A while later, Masato arrived. He silently stared at the scene before him. Yuya knelt, bowed his head, and confessed to Masato. Honestly. Looking at the young man and woman before him, Masato sighed. There is no way to explain this. Kimura knelt beside him, thinking that whatever happened, she would stand by Yuya-kun, and Yuya thought indeed that was how Kimura-san acted at that moment. If she turned them in then? Masato asked her why. Kimura hesitated and answered, it was to help me, Hiiragi-san. Before Kimura could finish, Masato cut in coldly. I find it hard to believe. Anyone can talk like that. Seeing Masato did not believe her, Kimura panicked and offered, I will tell the police I did it. I am the guilty one. Once again, Masato refused that offer. I cannot allow that. Thinking she would tell the police that Hiiragi-san was the killer, he questioned her with cold eyes. Can you guarantee after you confess you will not withdraw your statement? Seeing things grow tense, Yuya intervened. Masato-san, calm down. At that moment, Kimura made a bold decision. She reached for the weapon to leave her fingerprints on it and said, then I will also. Holding the weapon firmly in her hand, she decided, I will be the culprit too. If you have decided to confess, no excuse is needed. Suddenly, Yuya reached out to stop Kimura and said sorry. He stepped closer to the panicking Kimura and comforted her. On the contrary, Kimura-san, I was the one who dragged you into this. Though his expression was terrifying right now, his words were warm. You did nothing wrong. In Duya's mind, he could not understand. I never expected that. I did not think she had such courage. Another thought flashed through him. No, she may be more decisive than I thought. Now another personality seemed to emerge inside him as he repeated his own words. Decisive. Without further thought, Duya took the weapon back towards himself. Staring at Toba's body lying motionless on the ground, Masato decided, then let him disappear. Now how shall we dispose of him? Kimura stammered and suggested, my home, about an hour by car. Hearing that, Masato asked puzzled, is that information necessary now? She awkwardly continued, yes, there is a swamp. Then she described the scene there for Masato and Duya. Quiet, deep, no one goes there. If we drown him there, then... Hearing this, Masato asked Kimura, please lead the way. She also offered, I will handle the cleanup. Masato decided, we will finish everything tonight. A while later, the three were seated in Masato's car. He suddenly offered, I will remain silent for a while. Looking at the corpse in the trunk, he also reminded everyone, check the checkpoints and surveillance cameras. We must drive carefully, thank you. Inside the car, Duya was silent. He glanced at the scenery outside and fell into deep thought without a word. She clenched her hands and hesitated. Then why? Suddenly she sobbed in Duya's confusion in the interlaced darkness. Why do you think Knight accepted the murder proposal? Feeling the question was odd, Kimura quickly apologized to Duya. Sorry for asking that now. Duya could not help but laugh at her naive words and said, it is okay. It helps me distract my mind, thank you. Then he looked and praised her. You, Kimura-san, are considerate. Hearing this, Kimura blushed and replied, I am not that much. Duya suddenly tilted his head back and hummed a line from the play, half his loneliness, half his happiness, I suppose. His eyes gazed into the distance. He then repeated the words, personality disorder. Multiple personalities, one cause of dissociative identity disorder, is long-term neglect. He also explained everything to Kimura for her to understand. Existence, emotion, self-affirmation. Knight had probably suppressed all of those, or he may have grown up in an environment where he had no choice but to suppress himself. He therefore created a personality that acknowledged him and found salvation. That is how I understand it. Hearing this, Kimura said loneliness and happiness. Duya then calmly explained to her he could not refuse. Suddenly, Duya's phone notified him of a message. He thought, a message from Masato-san. In the message, he wrote sorry for messaging so late and asked if Kimura-san was truly necessary for the play because he was worried. Thinking of Kimura, Masato worried could she fail in his play. He asked what I thought about removing her from the performance. Looking at Masato's messages, Duya thought translated literally. Then he looked at Masato and realized his implication was that we should kill Kimura-san, right? Suddenly he was startled when Kimura called his name Hiiragi-san. Kimura looked at him and asked, do you like Knight, right? After that question, Duya suddenly remembered the victims who had died by his hands. He thought, kill this one, kill. When Duya received that question, he remained silent without saying anything. Then he suddenly smiled and answered her, I do not know anymore. Looking straight at Kimura, Duya said, he is very close, so I want to face him more to understand him. Looking in the rearview mirror, Duya decided indeed he could not agree Masato-san because, recalling Sakuragi's case, Duya was certain this matter was different from Sakuragi-san's case, and he still had not understood her fully. After that, he continued to talk with Kimura. A while later, the car stopped at a red light. Meanwhile, Masato understood Duya's decision and replied, I understand, however, please decide soon. Regardless of how kind Kimura was, Masato remained firm in his conviction. A person without beliefs will easily collapse. In the car, Kimura and Hiiragi chatted happily, but at this moment she sank into her thoughts. I often dream of myself. He listened intently to start a conversation, wanting to switch between Knight and Evan faster, but Kimura listened to Hiiragi intently and only dreamt of beautiful pasts. Looking at that gentle, smiling face, she thought it was like staring into an empty glass, a pitiful escape. Hiiragi continued saying it was fast enough and he must trust more because it was words from a fellow actor. At this moment, Kimura felt a hand reaching from behind, yet since the day Toba died, all my dreams shattered. A head dripping blood with lifeless eyes appeared, smiling gruesomely. She thought, could I escape? When she saw that face, Kimura woke from the dream with a terrified expression. She could not hold back nausea and rushed out of bed. Kimura hurriedly ran, causing pots and pans to fall to the floor. She was mentally shocked and opened the bathroom door to rush inside. Then she vomited violently into the toilet. Scene shifts to 5 days after Toba disappeared. The mushroom-headed guy complained, hands on hips, I cannot believe you dare return. Originally, the lead actor of Interlaced Darkness, Toba was now replaced. Shiokawa, a member who had left the troupe, had returned. Masato grabbed a man by the collar, saying it was for Duya-kun, not for any of you. Kiryu-san had taken him home. He was the one who got bored with Toba and left. If he had not returned, Interlaced Darkness would surely be cancelled. At that, Shiokawa awkwardly bowed to everyone. Hiiragi smiled softly and went to talk with Kimura. Everyone felt relieved he had returned, and the troop atmosphere softened. Seeing his smiling face, she shyly lowered her head. From then on, conversations between me and Hiiragi-san increased. Kimura observed Hiiragi closely at all times, thinking yet every time she saw him perform. Standing in the wings of the stage, she thought in her head, my eyes are dry again. Seeing his reflection, Kimura thought a young man seemed approachable, but when he stepped on stage, he became distant and elusive. Then she remembered the scene of Hiiragi laughing happily with colleagues. Gradually, everyone in the troupe recognized him for his dedication to the point he had no time to sleep. At this thought, Kimura felt weak and asked herself, what had I done? She turned and left silently. Though she had been here for years, a head suddenly appeared from under the stairs. That was Soba's head, its top split and two blood dripping into the eyes, turning them red. Seeing it staring at her, Kimura's face turned pale with fear, and she staggered back. Even outside her dreams, everything was starting to collapse. Too traumatized by the horror, she hurriedly ran away. Kimura ran outside as fast as she could without daring to look back. However, under the stairs there was nothing, it was just that she was too haunted by the previous horror. Scene shifts to 2 days before the premiere of Interlaced Darkness. Kimura stood in a corner on her phone with no news of a corpse being found. Seeing good news briefly, she felt relieved, of course. Then a male colleague passed by and called Kimura. He asked her to fetch the toolkit from the storage. Hearing storage, she recalled the scene of Hiiragi killing Toba, and her face turned pale. The colleague then added, and the hammer to the left of the door when you enter. Although terrified, she dared not refuse, thinking refusing would seem suspicious. Then she replied, I understand, and he said thank you. After a while in the warehouse, everything here was unusually quiet. Kimura thought, I have never approached that room since that day. With heavy steps, she slowly approached. Kimura timidly reached toward the door, sensing something inside. I do not want to go near it. And just as predicted, a blood-drenched head with bulging eyes of Toba emerged from inside. Seeing that she could not bear it and vomited, then ran away. Hiiragi noticed from behind and called out loudly, Kimura-san, are you okay? Then he came closer and offered a handkerchief to Kimura. Hiiragi sat beside her and gently reassured her, are you calm now? Seeing she was still panicked, he placed the cloth in Kimura's hand and asked, could you hold this for me while I clean up? After saying that, Hiiragi stood and left. Kimura watched him depart, thinking everything is terrible. Then she weakly said, I'm sorry, I should have cleaned. He interrupted, saying, just rest, I am fine, I am used to it. At that phrase, Kimura wondered what he meant by, I am used to it. Hiiragi replied casually, how to say? He scratched his head and forced a smile, saying, I have a girlfriend with a severe drinking problem. Upon hearing that, she suddenly widened her eyes and froze. Hiiragi reminded awkwardly, this is a secret I only told Kimura-san. She hung her head in silent thought, wondering how he could remain calm while she lacked so much. Then she asked, why could he always keep such a composed expression when she was already mentally prepared? Crouching in a corner, Kimura's psyche gradually warped. Did I even lack determination? Hiiragi said, if you ever cannot bear it anymore, then tell me. Hearing this, she fell silent with an awkward expression and thought, so then what am I? At this moment, the gaze of the owl statue observing them created a chilling feeling. He advised anyway, go home and rest, you have not looked well lately. Later, Kimura changed and headed home, lost in thought. He still took care of me, even while handling many tasks at once. Kimura walked deep in thought from the beginning until now. At that thought, she suddenly froze and looked down at her stomach. Then, a desperate thought occurred to her, and without hesitation, she went straight into the pharmacy. Impossible. Very quickly, Kimura returned home with faint light shining from the room. In the dark, messy room, an announcement sounded. Good evening, how are you? If you feel tired, do not push yourself tomorrow. On the table was a used pregnancy test, and 2 clear red lines showed. Standing by the bed, she was so haunted she imagined Toba slinging an arm around her shoulder with the threat, I want you to kill her child too. After regaining composure, she went to the table and picked up her phone. Then she slowly tapped on the message that had just arrived. After reading, she sent a reply message, Hiiragi-san, tomorrow is the final Phantom performance, right? He then replied, yes, so I will not attend tomorrow's practice. Seeing that message, she curled her lips into a devilish smile. Then she sent another message for the day after tomorrow in the early afternoon, please come to my house. Kimura did not forget to add a final provocative line, I have prepared a celebration party. Very quickly, the appointment day arrived. Hiiragi stood outside and rang the bell, living alone with no automatic lock. How careless. Masato, standing beside, pushed up his glasses and said inviting someone to the house on performance day was extremely thoughtless. He forced a smile and stammered, "So what?" Seeing no one answered, Hiiragi looked down and exclaimed, "The door's open." He gently opened the door and peeked in, calling, "Kimura-san, may I come in?" So the two entered together. However, at that moment, Masato noticed something, the sound of running water. Sensing something was wrong, Hiiragi involuntarily reacted with shock. Feeling uneasy inside, he hurriedly ran inside. Hiiragi ran so fast he even lost his glasses, but that did not matter. The most important thing now was Kimura. When he opened the door, his eyes met a bathtub full of blood, and her body, dressed in red, lay inside. Masato stepped closer and placed his pale hands on her wrist to check for a pulse. But, as he had expected, he bowed his head in disappointment. There was no pulse. Looking at the cold body, Masato declared suicide. This was almost certainly the case. He wiped his hands and stepped outside. She had intended someone to find her. What a bizarre celebration. Then he looked around and thought, now what should I do? At this moment, Masato noticed a suicide note on the table. He then called out Yuya-kun, but he sat with his face on his knees in silence. Masato opened the letter out of curiosity. "I will read it." Masato read it aloud firmly. "To Yuya-san, I apologize." He left out no line. On the bed was a suicide note written by me. "I confess I killed Toba." Yuya listened silently. "Please hand it to the police. The investigation will surely begin and the play will be cancelled." The next part said, "I will destroy the performance I risked everything to complete." While writing, her personality seemed twisted, her mouth twisted into a grotesque smile as if he deserved it. Next it said, "And Yuya-san, I want to leave a scar on you as well." She recalled her envy and wrote, "You live too well. If you do not do this, you will forget me." Then she recalled them talking so well in the car. "I do not want that. I want to be forever engraved in your memory." And the final part was, "Throw this letter away. I am sorry." After reading this, Masato raised his head and said she never thought I would read this letter. Seeing him silent, he thought, I understand. When driven to the edge, the mind narrows. Then he recalled his own tragedy and thought he had been the same. His mood grew dark. Masato warned, "Now let us leave this place." Yuya then said Kimura-san said to hand it to the police. Masato replied, "We cannot involve the police." Only Masato gripped the letter tightly and said, "I will deal with this suicide note too." As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves. "Someone will discover her soon. We will wait until then." Meanwhile, Yuya kept his head down in silence for a long moment. Masato lamented how pitiful. Yuya then replied, "It was selfish, right?" Yuya raised a hand to his head and said quietly, "Both Toba and Kimura-san dragged others into their mess. They imposed absurd demands, then were killed or committed suicide. So then." At this, Yuya thought of Toba's drunken breakdown and declared, "I will allow myself to do what I want." Hearing this, Masato's eyes widened in surprise. "Yuya-kun, what do you intend to do?" he asked in confusion. "Yuya-kun, you put on a shirt so hastily. I am going to pick some flowers." Masato misunderstood and pointed to the restroom. "Are you picking flowers because you need the bathroom?" Yuya shouted hurriedly. "I am going to find wildflowers. We need another layer of disguise in case there are witnesses." Masato then shouted in panic, "What are you talking about?" He took a shirt from Kimura's closet and said, "I will stage the scene to look like I killed Kimura-san." Then Yuya put on the shirt. "I will explain while preparing." And in a moment he had disguised himself as a woman. He wore an earpiece to facilitate communication. In the guise of a woman, Yuya walked calmly down the street. "The plan will be like this. What do you think?" On the other side, Masato replied via the earpiece, "I understand for now both the mission you requested and the purpose of picking flowers." But he had equipped himself fully. Then he looked at Kimura's body on the ground and said, "This is truly insane." Masato sighed deeply and said, "Stop this. Even if we did it, there would be no gain." Yuya rejected that, saying, "There is indeed a great reward." Masato's expression grew serious. He said, "We have not revealed anything about the flowers to the media. It will serve as a counterattack when Inohara-san pressures us later." Yuya continued to explain the plan. "If we handle Kimura-san's case like before, it could be viewed as a serial murder." Yuya walked deeper into the forest and said, "Thus we can decide how we would have killed Kimura-san if we were the culprit." He searched and discussed at the same time. "Inohara-san suspects us, but he lacks enough evidence to convince the entire police force. Otherwise, we would already be arrested." Masato listened intently. He said, "This is an offensive move before they get closer. But if we are caught, everything ends, Masato-san." Yuya stroked a flower and asserted, "I am an actor." Then he resumed tactical discussion. "If the body is discovered, the play will be cancelled. If we want to perform today, this is our only chance." He pleaded, "Please let me play both Knight and Evan." Facing the situation, Yuya lifted the flower pot and begged, "I implore you." Meanwhile, Masato fell silent in thought. Then he raised a hand to adjust his glasses after deep reflection. He reached into a cabinet and asked, "Be honest with me. There must be another main motive, right?" At this question, Duya suddenly froze. You know, he replied hastily. Of course I know. How many years do you think we have been together? Then he suggested, tell me your true feelings. Duya had already picked flowers by this point. Suddenly, Masato said something strange. In the meantime, I will prepare for the opening ceremony. This made Duya curious. Opening ceremony. Then he envisioned a horrifying scene and stated if a killer added flowers to a corpse, they would be called Hanaya, or florists online. But this plan is not so cute. The scene shifts to the City Public Security Bureau. Inside, everyone worked busily. Suddenly, someone called Inohara-san. Hearing this, he turned and asked, "Oh, Inui. Good evening, what is it?" Inui leaned in with a mysterious look and whispered, "Actually, I have noticed something since we left last time." Inohara remembered vaguely and said, "Left that day? You seem deep in thought then." Suddenly, Inui uttered a sentence that shocked him. We were talking about that actor. He suggested, so I wondered if something was shady and started collecting information on Duya. Inohara tensed his muscles and asked, "Did you discover anything?" Inui replied quickly, 2 people went missing, and it is related to Duya. At this, he frowned. 2 people. Then, with a serious face, he recounted, I am investigating a female staff member who used to work at Duya's management agency. But a play featuring Duya is about to start and an actor involved has disappeared. Hearing this, Inohara said it is not about it starting soon, but that the performance is today. Inui marveled, you grasp information so fast. He responded indifferently, yes, there are various reasons. Then he exclaimed, I have grown quite interested. At this moment, a message arrived, are you free tonight? The next line said, I have tickets for Duya's new play. Would you like to come with me? I want you to be my bodyguard. After reading, Inohara fell silent with a frown, muttering, indeed, this is very tempting. Very soon the two had met in person. Inohara asked, can I really serve as your bodyguard? Do you not have a closer friend? The woman replied, it is fine. It is fine. Midori accompanied happily and asked, by the way, how is work lately, Ino-chi? Hearing this, he paused in silence for a moment. Then he asked in return, how is Sakurai-san doing? I have not seen her since that day. She replied, same as always, nothing has changed. Inohara asked further, is it just busyness or because of work? Midori tapped her phone and said, of course that is part of it, but then she put the phone away and said, Duya's mother is in hospital due to a serious illness. She looked sad and recounted recently the surgery she had been waiting for finally got scheduled. Midori walked and said so now he throws himself even more into work. Hearing this, Inohara frowned and murmured his mother. Then he turned and asked, does that put pressure on him? She waved her hand and explained, not exactly. To him, acting is a passion, not a burden. Midori recalled watching Duya work until she fell asleep and asserted his performance is not because of his mother. But the next moment she uncertainly added, perhaps. Scene shifts to Duya's dressing room. Someone knocked and called, Duya-kun, it is me. In the next moment he opened the door and entered but froze at the sight around him. He saw Duya sitting at the table looking exhausted and lifeless. Welcome back, Rihito-san, it feels lighter to have you back. Duya slowly said, if anyone inspects, we are doomed. Masato responded, yes, it is tense, but more importantly, are you okay? He approached with concern and asked, you look drained. Duya gave a wry smile and replied, I am fine. Then he explained, I am just sore in my shoulders from cleanup tasks. Compared to you, this is nothing. Masato recalled when he was assigned arranging the body. Next was handling matters with the funeral home carefully. Both tasks are done, so we just need to hope for luck. Duya recalled the bag and said, I left Kimura-san's bag in the dressing room. Then the image of him working relentlessly appeared and his costume was finalized. Next, he reviewed the plan one more time. The route has been analyzed and now I just need to go on stage. Duya wearily tapped his phone and said, that is that. After hearing this, Masato silently observed. At this moment, he showed him something on his phone. It was the messages with Inohara. I have a ticket for tonight, so I will attend with bodyguard Ino-chi. He then noted that detective will come to tonight's performance. Masato's expression grew even more serious. Midori serious. Duya leaned back in his chair and calmly said, I really do not want Inohara-san there. Recalling that face, Duya hesitated. He could see through our act. He sighed tiredly and said, me playing both Knight and Evan will expose all my acting skills limits and everything in front of him. At this, Duya stood up suddenly. There is no more time to hesitate. Rihito-san, I will review the route again. Masato replied, let us go. A moment later, Duya narrated attentively to Masato. If we move this way, no one will spot us. Luckily, this old theater has no security cameras. Then he handed a paper to him. I have marked the location of troop members on the floor E map, so use that if anything happens. Masato held his hand out and took it understood. At this moment, Duya fell silent and stared at Masato seriously. Then he bowed deeply. I truly apologize for dragging you into this. He said, I know it is selfish, but... Before he could finish, Masato interrupted Duya-kun. Masato in a stern tone said, I cannot bear this, so I will speak plainly. He looked annoyed at Duya. You have zero charm now. Upon hearing this, Duya blinked in confusion. Masato pushed his glasses in a mysterious way and said, "Now, you are a burden to Ryokui Susuza, even worse than an outsider." At this, Yuya fell silent and sighed deeply with feeling. He recalled Masato's earlier words, judging me. "You do not want Inohara-san there out of fear of exposing your skills. Who do you think you are?" At this, Masato became furious and shouted, "Do not be choosy about your audience." He asked loudly, "Why do you perform?" Upon hearing this, Yuya seemed enlightened and opened his eyes wide. Then he took a deep breath and stammered,